Chapter 5:14. Phew. I really didn't expect to come back to this place in my life. Standing on the ginger-yellow ground, Su Shenxing exhaled and whispered. The sky was covered by another celestial body. Looking from the ground, he could only see a dark mass. This land was so barren that Su Shenxing couldn't even see a blade of grass. There were only ginger-yellow stones and yellow stones. Although there was no sand or dust, the smell in the air made people feel as if the whole ground was covered in a ginger-yellow fog. Looking from afar on the other side of the horizon, he could vaguely see a similarly yellow canyon. Anyway, let's get out of here first. Just as Su Shenxing made up his mind, a figure landed beside him with a loud thud, accompanied by a scream. Scared me to death. After a while, Chihaya Fukuyama sat up and sighed with tears in her eyes. That guy didn't tell me he would appear in the air. Why are you here? Su Shenxing asked in surprise. He was really surprised. In the entire Sakura apartment except for little Chiketsu and Yu Jingjing, in Su Shenxing's opinion, Chihaya Fukuyama was the last person who would follow him here. He wouldn't be surprised if Dog Girl and Dehei appeared here. After all, in a sense, Su Shenxing and this guy basically had no ties. Even Asahi Sakura Kanji and Su Shenxing's relationship was closer than Chihaya Fukuyama's. Of course it's to keep an eye on you, scumbag, so you don't go out and fool around. Chihaya Fukuyama replied confidently. Although she also had the option of telling Su Shenxing what Qin Xingyan looked like when she came in the end, Chihaya Fukuyama decided to hide it for the time being. In addition, she didn't want to directly admit that she was here to help, so she simply found a reason that made Su Shenxing a little dumbfounded. Forget it. Su Shenxing naturally saw that she didn't mean what she said, but he didn't intend to ask. Compared to Chihaya Fukuyama's thoughts, it was more important for him to solve this dream as soon as possible and wake up Emily. As long as you don't get in my way, it's fine. Although Chihaya Fukuyama wanted to refute Su Shenxing's presumptuous view of others as a burden, the fact was that even if she used all her strength, she might not even be able to hurt a hair on this guy's head. If it were other girls, they might use the fact that they were women to make a scene and pester Su Shenxing endlessly, but Chihaya Fukuyama not only knew her place, but also had self-respect, so of course she wouldn't do such a thing. So what should we do next? Do we find that little girl Emily in this Gobi Desert? She asked straightforwardly. The Gobi Desert. Su Shenxing repeated it ambiguously, then asked with a half-smile, what do you think the process of solving a nightmare is like? Entering a nightmare, then step by step like playing an RPG, find and trigger the plot and finally solve it? Isn't that the case? Chihaya Fukuyama asked angrily. Well, if it's a normal situation, maybe it's like that. But there's a problem. This is the Great Devil World, so you'd better be mentally prepared. Su Shenxing opened his mouth and looked back at the sky, because from the beginning it's the climax. Then his voice turned cold. I'm right, aren't I? I've seen enough, big guy. Big guy. Wait, I said. Chihaya Fukuyama didn't react for a while. But immediately, the huge Dehei-colored celestial body in the sky began to gradually move away from the ground. When it moved away to a certain distance, the girl took a deep breath and saw the scales of the other side clearly. It was an incomparably huge eye, and the black color that almost covered the entire sky before was just the pupil of the eye. So you haven't noticed it until now. What are we on top of now? In the face of this situation, Su Shenxing was as calm as ever. Only then did the girl realize that there was something wrong with the gobi under her feet. Although the ground was as hard as a rock, it was completely different from a rock. The white particles also exuded a strange sweet smell, and the whole earth seemed to exude a wonderful wheat fragrance. All of this was just like, yes, the endless plain we are on is just the surface of a piece of whole wheat bread. The canyon in front of us that is more than 50 meters deep is just an opening for the bread to be heated more evenly. Only then did Su Shenxing reveal the mystery. Can you tell me that you're just joking? The girl's face was ugly. At this time the owner of the eye was quite far away from them, or rather from the bread. The somewhat human-like face finally appeared in the girl's eyes, but because it was too far away at first glance, it gave people the feeling of looking at the moon on Earth. Unfortunately, it's not possible. Su Shenxing smiled and cut off the girl's last hope. The next moment, a new celestial body appeared above the Earth. It was like a huge irregular planet, a huge celestial body that shrouded the entire breadland. It was a hand. Chihaya Fukuyama had never experienced such a deep sense of despair. It was like being on Earth but discovering that Mars was about to turn around. No matter where you ran to, you would only end up in GG. Although the giant's hand had not fallen, it had almost covered the entire sky. No matter how you ran, it was useless. It was simply unavoidable. What's wrong? Although I said it was the climax from the beginning, I didn't say it was the end. Su Shinxing smiled slightly and Roland Duel instantly appeared in his hand. Chihaya Fukuyama only saw the blade of the long sword in his hand flashing. The next moment, the huge celestial body in the sky was cut in half from the middle. Dark red viscous liquid gushed out from the cross-section of the celestial body, and the whole sky seemed to be dyed red. It poured down like a torrential rain, but with the second flash of Su Shinxing's blade, it was cut in half. At this time, Su Shinxing's empty left hand grabbed the right hand of the girl, who was dumbfounded by the unscientific scene. "Don't be in a daze, let's go." Then the cloud scale on Su Shinxing's body passed along his hand and covered Chihaya Fukuyama's whole body. With Su Shinxing's powerful leap, the scenery around the two of them turned into countless spots of light, which they left behind. If Yunlin had not cast a few wards on Su Shinxing, the force produced in that instant would have been enough to crush the girl, who was a deity, into dust. When the force was exhausted, the girl found that they seemed to have jumped to a place higher than the giant. It was only then that the scream of the giant whose hand was cut off reached their ears. "This guy is the great demon race, the great demon realm, the absolute top of the food chain in this world. Their bodies are very huge, and the guy we just saw was half the size of Earth. I've even encountered a planet level 1. This world is too unscientific, isn't it?" Chihaya Fukuyama could not help but feel a little powerless. Originally, as a god, after possessing power far beyond that of ordinary people, the girl still felt a little proud of her power, even though she would not deliberately show it. But after encountering such ferocious monsters, her power was completely useless. The king of the great demon race is the final demon king in the depths of this world. He collects other worlds, seizes the source power of those worlds, and uses it to expand the great demon realm. Unlike many other worlds, although the great demon realm can surpass many other worlds in terms of size, in fact, the great demon realm does not have the concept of a universe. Its existence is just like the myth of the heavens being round and the earth being round. It is completely composed of this infinite land and sky. Su Shinxing casually took a step in the air, and he could fly a considerable distance in the air with the girl. Because the size of the objects in the surroundings that could be used as reference was not normal, Chiyo Yamanaka could not estimate how far Su Shinxing could fly with this step. Well, if this could be counted as flying, how far they flew. But from the fact that every time they flew, it seemed to break the sound barrier, and even the air around cloud scale directly turned into plasma due to the effect of high-speed movement, it would probably be quite an astonishing number if expressed in meters. That guy, the final demon king. He claimed that the reason he collected other worlds was to better protect them from destruction, but in reality, it was only to plunder the origins of other worlds and use them to continuously strengthen himself. His colonization of over 9,000 worlds succeeded, but several times that number of worlds were destroyed as a result, and all of this was due to his own greed. "You've met the Demon King?" Chihaya Fukuyama tried to divert his attention from the giants chasing after them as he asked Su Shinxing. To be precise, Su Shinxing paused, then continued, "I killed him." Many monsters blocked the two of them, from the evolved form of the kraken dragon that appeared on Earth before, to the supergiant serpent that could circle the planet, to the giant wolf that seemed to be able to swallow the entire solar system in one bite, and so on. If any of these monsters were placed on Earth without the existence of Su Shinxing and Mo Li, it would immediately lead to the destruction of Earth and even the solar system. These monsters obviously wanted to stop Su Shinxing and the others, but the power that could shake the world in a certain world was useless. None of the monsters could withstand the flash of Su Shinxing's sword. Chihaya Fukuyama even thought that if Su Shinxing was not too lazy to waste time, it would not be difficult for him to turn back and kill the giants chasing after them. And that was the truth. After leaving the house that seemed to be comparable to the size of a galaxy, the two of them finally arrived outside. The great demonic realm, which had absorbed the origins of more than 9,000 worlds, was an extremely distorted world. Outside, one could see inconceivably gigantic trees as large as the world tree that only appeared in fantasy. One could also see horses the size of mice, roaring dragons flying across the sky, and ant-men building exquisite fortresses that resembled models. But there was one building that could be seen at a glance no matter where in this world. the naturally impossible-to-be-born mountain in the center of the world, as magnificent as a sky pillar. Although it could not be seen from the ground, there was actually a castle at the top of the mountain, and that was where the final Demon King was located. At this time on the sky pillar, there was a thin green vine wrapped around it. Because the distance was not particularly close, even Su Xinxing could only see a trace of invisible green after looking carefully. Sure enough, what's wrong? The girl who had been scared numb by this crazy world asked subconsciously. The timeline of this nightmare is when I first came to this world. Not knowing if it was because of nostalgia for the past or some other reason, Su Xinxing actually answered Chihaya Fukuyama's question. The vine on the sky pillar was planted by me. At that time there was a restriction on the mountain and there was no way to climb directly, so it took me a long time to get a pea that could grow quickly and without limit, and then I entered the castle at the top of the mountain. At this time Chihaya Fukuyama came back to her senses. Are we going there? No, before that I still have a place to go. Speaking of which, I always feel that my sense of distance is a bit strange. I always feel that the mountain is very far away, but it feels different from the distance that I see on Earth. Chihaya Fukuyama rubbed her eyes. Maybe she felt that there was something wrong with her eyes, but even so, the strange feeling of looking at the sky pillar still lingered in her heart, lingering. Well, that's normal. We are not far from the mountain, but we are not close either. According to the calculation of the world where Earth is, it should be about 120,000 light-years. What? Chihaya Fukuyama was dumbfounded. 120,000 light-years. Su Xinxing calmly repeated. In that case, didn't the scene on the other side of the mountain happen 120,000 years ago? Chihaya Fukuyama was a little crazy. No, you calculated it according to the speed of light in the world where Earth is. The light in this world is also distorted, and it can almost ignore time and space to spread, so what we see is real time. What the hell kind of world is this? The Great Devil Realm is such a place you'll get used to it. By the way, our movement speed is also faster than the speed of light, more specifically, it should be faster than 1,000-2,000. Su Xinxing shrugged first to indicate that it was not a big deal, then he started counting with his fingers. According to the theory of relativity, if you exceed the speed of light, you can already travel through time. Chihaya Fukuyama continued to complain. You should ask the physicist about this kind of thing. What's the use of telling me anyway? We didn't go back to the past, right? Su Xinxing continued to spread his hands to express helplessness. What he could see was only the phenomenon. As for why this phenomenon existed, old Su said that he was not a scientist, so why should he care so much? I give up. So where are you going? Chihaya Fukuyama seemed to finally understand that this world was not very reasonable. Some of the common sense on Earth did not seem to be applicable here. Well, a place I once passed by. Su Xinxing said this and paused slightly. His originally somewhat frivolous expression became slightly more serious. About this nightmare, I have a conjecture that I want to try to verify. Chapter 5:15. So we haven't arrived yet? Chihaya Fukuyama asked, wanting to cry but having no tears. Now she was being carried on Su Xinxing's shoulder like a sack, experiencing the legendary high-speed train for ordinary people. Although she had expressed her doubts to Su Xinxing before, the wording was exquisite, the words were tactful, and there were thousands of words. She had to write it down, it would be too much. In summary, it would probably be, "Are you King kidding me?" It was no wonder she had such doubts. In this world, because the nature of light had been tampered with, it could spread almost without any delay, so a person's sense of distance would also produce a strange error. For example, the towering stone mountain did not seem far away, but in fact, it was 120,000 light-years away. In addition, although Su Xinxing did not mention it, in theory, even if it was a star larger than the sun, the light emitted from such a distant place could only be seen as a speck of light not much bigger than a speck of dust. Even in this world, the theory of far small and near large was still applicable. It was conceivable that even if it was 120,000 light-years away, it still looked like a pillar how huge its body was. If it was in the universe where Earth was located, such a huge object could not exist at all. Its mass alone was far beyond the level of a black hole. But in this great devil realm where common sense was distorted, it really existed in the world. And Chihaya Fukuyama, because of Su Xinxing's method of moving in the air and the distance produced by the surrounding scenery, would have the illusion of moving very slowly. In addition, there was no theoretical reference that could be 100% confirmed, so it was normal for her to be fooled by Su Shinxing and feel that this world was actually not so strange. After understanding Chihaya Fukuyama's suspicion, Su Shinxing did not take it to heart. He just made a bet with the other party. In fact, he also felt that this kind of running was too slow, even if each step could travel several light years. It was not that Su Shinxing could not run faster, but he had certain concerns. After all, even if the cloud scale formed a world of its own to ensure that the girl would not be directly crushed to death by the acceleration caused by his superluminal movement, the cloud scale's carrying capacity was limited. If he went faster than that, the cloud scale might be torn apart. At that time, Su Shinxing would be fine, but the girl would be reduced to ashes. Therefore, he decided to make a bet with the girl. The bet was the position. Well, posture. As long as the body contact area could increase, Su Shinxing could directly cast protection on the girl, and it would be fine to run a little faster. Because of this, he simply let the girl go and let her try to run on her own. Chihaya Fukuyama naturally did the same. However, to her disbelief, although she ran as fast as she could, and at the same time she was getting farther and farther away from Su Shinxing, but everything around her did not seem to be getting closer at all. After running for more than an hour, Chihaya Fukuyama had no way to know the exact time because she did not wear a watch. She could no longer see Su Shinxing, but the scene around her did not change at all. Even the nearest thing, which looked like a small mound, did not get closer at all. So the girl simply gritted her teeth and used the escape technique she learned from the earth lowly, moving forward in units of 100 miles. Chihaya Fukuyama did not know how much magical power or divine power a god had, but when she was a little numb and the power in her body was almost exhausted, the scene around her was still the same. It was not until this time that she began to believe Su Shinxing's words. Because of the blurred sense of distance, the surrounding things seemed to be very close to them, but in fact the distance was astronomical. It was a distance that even a god on an ordinary planet like her would find difficult to cross. When the earth lowly taught her, she once said that as long as she mastered the escape technique of the immortals, she could go to most places in the celestial empire in a flash. After that, she also curiously tried the limit of the escape technique. At that time, she came to the conclusion that it was not a problem to go around the earth once, but it was a little difficult to go around the earth twice. Here was a little comparison. The circumference of the Earth's equator was about 40,000 kilometers, which meant that Chihaya Fukuyama's limit was between 40,000 and 80,000 kilometers. However, the speed of light was less than 7.5 times around the Earth per second. It took about 8 minutes for the sunlight to travel from the sun to the Earth, and this was considered a short distance among the celestial bodies in the universe. Even the moon, the closest celestial body to the Earth, took nearly 1.3 seconds to travel the distance between the two at the speed of light. In other words, Chihaya Fukuyama's escape technique could not even reach the moon, and Su Shinxing's starting point was calculated in light years. Then the girl was a little flustered. Although the distance of tens of thousands of kilometers was nothing in this world, it was extremely far for humans. Even if the starting point was a little bit off, Su Shinxing might pass by her. In that case, she would be left alone in this place where she could not escape no matter how hard she tried. It was really too scary. What are you looking around for? At this time, the girl was startled by the sudden voice, and then she found that Su Shinxing had appeared beside her without her knowing. At this moment, Chihaya Fukuyama felt that Su Shinxing's face was unusually handsome. However, this feeling of excitement was broken by Su Shinxing in the next moment. He picked his nose, frowned and said, "What, are you going to go back on your word?" At this moment, Chihaya Fukuyama felt that she might have to say goodbye to her maiden heart for the rest of her life. "Yeah, we're almost there." Su Shinxing's words made Chihaya Fukuyama on his shoulder come back to her senses. Suddenly, the feeling that was 1,000 times worse than motion sickness swept through the girl's brain, and she wished that she could just faint. Where are you going?" In order to make herself feel better, Chihaya Fukuyama tried to divert her attention and talk to Su Shinxing. Although she felt that if this continued, she might vomit all over Su Shinxing. "Actually, I was very curious from the beginning. Because of Yunlin's help, even though they were moving at high speed, Su Shinxing's words still reached the girl's ears. Because the time of Mo Li's nightmare is wrong." "What time does a nightmare have?" Chihaya Fukuyama complained. "Even so, the problem is that at this time," Su Shinxing paused and frowned, "Mo Li hasn't been born yet." Chapter 516. Wait. What do you mean Miss Emily hasn't been born yet? Chihaya Fukuyama asked in surprise. Is this dream world from more than 10 years ago? No, according to Earth's concept of time, it should be 3 years ago. Su Shinxing shook his head and said. Then isn't Miss Emily only 3 years old? Chihaya Fukuyama was stunned. If she wasn't being carried on Su Shinxing's shoulder and couldn't turn around, she would have already looked at him with disdain. Yes, in theory that's true, but you can't just say one side of the story. Su Shinxing casually replied. Also, it's not good to casually call someone a beast. Did I say that out loud? You really did say that in your heart, I guessed. Although he was madly complaining in his heart, Su Shinxing's expression didn't change much. Oh right, I have good news for you. Wah what? Chihaya Fukuyama's voice sounded a bit scared. We're almost at our destination. Really? The girl suddenly felt a sense of joy as if she had just survived a disaster. Really? And in order to let you end your pain faster, Su Shinxing grinned, I'll speed up a bit. 10 minutes later, they finally arrived at the destination that Su Shinxing spoke of. It was different from the terrifying area that seemed to be filled with many things, but was actually distorted by the sense of distance. This was a stone mushroom forest. There were huge stone pillars that were several meters thick everywhere, and at the top of the pillars was a stone cap that looked like a parasol. If you kept a distance, it would look like a giant enoki mushroom, just that the mushroom cap was relatively large. Because of the dense growth of the stone mushrooms, the sense of distance here was relatively normal. You must have done it on purpose. Chihaya Fukuyama half knelt on the ground, her face pale and her expression sad. She felt a surge of acid in her stomach, but she didn't know if it was because this was just a dream or because she didn't have time to eat today, but she couldn't vomit. She could only keep retching. No, how could that be? Su Shinxing, on the other hand, was flushed red and his face was bright. I'm just trying to make you suffer less. Who are you lying to for such a small distance? You don't need to speed like that. Chihaya Fukuyama's reaction. I won't joke around. Su Shinxing put away the smile on his face and became much more serious. Actually, the reason why I ran so fast, other than wanting to confirm something here, is because there are some other reasons. It's not just to torment you. You actually admitted it so openly. Just how evil are you? As soon as Chihaya Fukuyama finished speaking, the nausea and dizziness caused by as if she was stuffed into a washing machine and spun at 50 times the normal speed for more than 10 minutes came again, and she couldn't help but retch again. I already said it's not like that. Su Shinxing sighed and explained to the girl while walking into the depths of the stone mushroom forest. Chihaya Fukuyama, who was holding the stone mushroom and retching, gritted her teeth and quickly followed. In fact, the area around Tianju Mountain is said to be divided into many special areas according to different situations. As far as I know, the number of areas has reached or even exceeded 4,500 years ago. Wait a minute, although I haven't learned Chinese for long, doesn't yen mean yen in Chinese? Chihaya Fukuyama interrupted. Oh, Chinese has many meanings. This is the unit of number similar to thousands and tens of thousands. In terms of what you can understand, Nian is about 10 to the 44th power. If there's no problem, I'll continue. Su Shinxing ignored the girl's dumbfounded look and calmly walked on the ground as he spoke. When Su Shinxing and his companions first came to the great demonic realm, with the help of others, they were lucky enough to land in this stone mushroom forest not far from Tianju Mountain. At that time, Su Shinxing had just combined the 12 holy swords into the origin sacred sword, and his own strength had not yet reached the peak. Although he also created moves like the brave high-speed rail for fun, and successfully made the word high-speed rail become a synonym for terror in the other world. Some other worlds even used this word as the root of words, giving birth to legends of demons that could move at super high speed. Compared to the high-speed rail of ordinary people now, it was almost the same as a tricycle. In addition, there were other companions that needed to be taken care of, so they walked in this stone mushroom forest for quite a long time. As a result, if the place Su Shinxing was most familiar with in the great demonic realm was the Demon King's castle, then the second most familiar place was undoubtedly this stone mushroom forest. Of course, this is only one of the reasons. Do you know why the great demonic realm divided the area around Tianju Mountain into so many areas? Su Shinxing suddenly asked Chihaya Fukuyama. For the convenience of management. The girl replied with uncertainty. You're wrong. Su Shenxing made a cross with his hands and taunted in high spirits. Your voice makes people very angry. In fact, in addition to the 9,000 worlds that were made into lattice worlds, there are more worlds that were directly destroyed because their origin power was seized. However, the great demonic realm itself was also distorted because of the fusion of tens of thousands of worlds' origins. The laws of countless worlds collided with each other, giving birth to more and more laws that were more deformed, and these laws would finally appear on this land in the form of freaks. The division of areas I mentioned before did not rely on the size of the land or anything else, but purely on the division of freaks. There is a freak in every area. At this point, even Su Shenxing was a little more serious. The power of the freaks cannot be underestimated. To be honest, although no freak can cause me harm, there are some more disgusting types among them. Even if I was captured by them, it would be a little troublesome. It can't be. Although Chihaya Fukuyama despised Su Shenxing in terms of feelings and thought that this guy was a scumbag with an extremely debauched private life, it was undeniable that this scumbag's strength could be described as abnormal. There was basically nothing on earth that could hurt him. At this time, listening to Su Shenxing's exaggeration of the so-called freaks, he could not help but feel a little incredulous. Unfortunately, it's all true. Su Shenxing smiled slightly, not at all alluring. That's why I crossed other areas as soon as possible and came here directly. First, to find traces of the past, and second, because I understand the freaks here. They won't be an obstacle to our progress. At this point he stopped and looked ahead. We're here. If I'm not mistaken, this is the place, Su Shenxing muttered in a voice that Chihaya Fukuyama could not hear. The place where I died. In comparison, the oddities in this stone mushroom forest were much more ordinary. Although many places were normal, there were still many minefields hidden in this stone mushroom forest. These minefields were where the anomalies were located. The anomalies here were also a kind of law. Although the exact nature was unknown, after all, Su Shenxing did not have the ability to observe the law. Su Shenxing, who had been in contact with them many times, could roughly understand that the law seemed to be not allowing matter exceeding a certain size to appear within a range. And that size was probably the size of fine sand. Everything that exceeded that size would be collapsed and decomposed into fine sand by this law. Although it seemed to be more destructive than the one next door, in fact, because this law conflicted with Su Shenxing's own law, it would be resisted by his power and would not cause any harm to him. Of course, that was under normal circumstances. So that's how it is. After listening to Su Shenxing's explanation, the girl nodded as if she understood. Then, as if she had thought of something, she stared. No. I was clearly asking you what you were looking for. Didn't I tell you? Su Shenxing scratched his head. There are two things I'm looking for. One is my corpse, and the other is a ring. These are the only two things that have fallen into the anomalies of this area but have not been turned into sand. Wait, I seem to have heard something very strange. Didn't you hear it clearly? Then I'll say it again. No, I mean, what do you mean by your corpse? You said it as if you were dead. Are you a ghost now? Chihaya Fukuyama sighed and complained. But then she realized that Su Shenxing did not respond to her joke. She turned her head and saw the other party's strange and gloomy expression. The corners of his mouth were slightly raised, but there was no smile at all. It was a bone-chilling fake smile. Wait, could it be that you're really... Suddenly, Chihaya Fukuyama felt her scalp go numb. That's right, Su Shenxing's cold voice slowly sounded. I'm really dead. The girl swallowed her saliva unconsciously and widened her eyes. She quietly turned around and tried not to attract Su Shenxing's attention. She slowly retreated as if nothing had happened. Then Su Shenxing returned to his original lazy expression. But you've been resurrected. The hero's great technique is good. Hey, can I hit you? Go ahead. Su Shenxing spread his hands and had an expression that said, go ahead and hit me. If it works, it's my loss. The girl thought about it and felt that it was not worth it to hurt her hand, so she turned her head and sulked. Su Shenxing stopped teasing her and carefully observed the ground. Sure enough, you can't find my corpse. Since Emoli would materialize himself with the Origin Sacred Sword when he had a nightmare, it was most likely that the dream had not progressed to the stage where he was killed. So he began to focus on looking for the ring. By the way, I can understand why you didn't die after falling in here. But what's with the ring? Is there really something that doesn't turn into sand in this anomaly? Chihaya Fukuyama tried to use his divine power to transform into a water droplet and threw it into the minefield, but it also turned into sand. Who knew what that water droplet had experienced? He suddenly asked in disbelief. Other than the sacred sword in my hand, as long as it contains a law, and the law itself conflicts with the anomaly, and has a higher spiritual level than the anomaly, it can be immune to the effects of the anomaly. That ring is one of them. Su Shinxing showed a nostalgic look and said slowly, and as far as I know, that thing is a self-consistent low ring. Chapter 518. Because of the anomaly, the sand was very flat. In theory, if there was a foreign object, it should be easy to find it. But after a while, Su Shinxing still could not find what he was looking for. Could it be that you remembered the wrong place? Maybe it's not here but in some other minefield or something. Didn't you say that there are many such minefields in this area? Chihaya Fukuyama tried to comfort him. It was the first time she saw Su Shinxing showing such a shaken expression. That's impossible. I can't remember it wrongly. Su Shinxing took a deep breath and stabilized his emotions, but in this way the nature of this nightmare world is almost clear. If his body was missing, it could be explained by the wrong time. For example, Su Shinxing in this world had not yet challenged the Demon King, but was sent outside because of Mo Li's nightmare. But if even the ring could not be found, then there was no doubt that one thing was clear. This nightmare world was not the same as the previous Earth God's dream world. Because the Earth God's dream was tainted with the power of the gods, coupled with the interference of power at the level of Mo Li, it caused a mimetic relationship between the dream and reality, and even caused a considerable impact on reality. For example, the dragon brother Ao Li, who should have disappeared, was still alive even after experiencing the change of the Li River. But this nightmare world was a world created based on Mo Li's cognition. Even if he did something in this world, it could not affect reality. After all, a virtual world simply did not exist. It was quite different from the real history, so it could not replace or affect history. There would not be a situation where the great demonic realm appeared again after Su Shinxing returned to Earth because of what he did here. In addition, the object of Mo Li's dream was the great demonic realm. Even if the great demonic realm was only a world in terms of units, it had absorbed many world origins. Whether it was concept or energy level, it was not on the same level as the world where Earth was. Even Mo Li could not easily affect its existence, not to mention that the current Mo Li only had 30% of his usual power. Then what should we do now? Chihaya Fukuyama said, to be honest, I've had enough of this strange world. In fact, for her to be able to survive until now in the great demonic realm with its dense magic factor, other than her relationship with a god, she herself could already be considered to be gifted. But even so, the young lady gradually felt her chest tightening and breathing becoming difficult. If this continued, she might suffocate soon. Since it's a nightmare, then there must be a source for Mo Li's nightmare. If we can destroy it, then the nightmare will end. Since he found that this was not the real history, Su Shinxing's interest plummeted. His face was dull, and it seemed that he planned to leave here as soon as possible. Your annoyance is too obvious, Chihaya Fukuyama complained. You're so long-winded. I just hate doing useless things. Although Su Shinxing didn't say anything, it wasn't hard to guess what he was going to do. Mo Li was born in the castle on Tianju Mountain. Although that girl shouldn't have been born at this time, if there's something in the great demonic realm that can make her have nightmares, it's most likely in that place. Su Shinxing looked at the pillar-like mountain in the distance and said casually. In fact, if it was the original great demonic realm, there should be one more thing that could make Mo Li afraid, and that was the Su Shinxing of this era. Although in the eyes of the current Su Shinxing he was a good-for-nothing teenager in this era, and because of various reasons he had no trust in humans and most intelligent creatures. But in fact he was quite strong with the Origin Sacred Sword. As long as the Origin Sacred Sword's power of creation flowed back a little, or through some special methods, it wouldn't be difficult to destroy a world. And the Mo Li of this era hadn't been born yet. Even if she had the cognition of this era, she might still be an embryo or something else. Therefore the Su Shinxing of this era was also fatal to her. But there was no need to worry about this problem because the Su Shinxing of this time seemed to have been brought to the outside world by Mo Li's nightmares, and was pixelated by old Su himself. Therefore the only possibility left was that castle. Can we discuss something? After looking at the mountain in the distance, Chihaya Fukuyama's face suddenly changed, and he asked Su Shinxing with a bitter expression, "Of course you don't have to be so afraid. Do I look like such an unreasonable person?" Su Shinxing's face showed a very commercial smile. "Ah, by the way, we won't accept all complaints and bad reviews about the movement method." What kind of state organ are you?" Chihaya Fukuyama said bitterly. "Then are you mentally prepared?" Su Shinxing continued to smile, and he didn't care about the girl's resentment that seemed to have a black gas spreading out from her body. "Wait, let me take a deep breath first. I should be glad that I didn't eat anything before coming in." 10 minutes later, Chihaya Fukuyama held the wall of Tianju Mountain with a pale face and retched at the foot of the mountain. From this point of view, the mountain wall was like an endless huge wall that extended to the other side. You couldn't even feel the slightest curve. "If you're done retching, come up, we still have to climb the mountain," Su Shinxing said to the girl who had just finished retching without any pity. "Wait. Since your goal is only to destroy the source of nightmares, and the source of nightmares is in the castle at the top of the mountain," Chihaya Fukuyama's face was pale, and she felt that if she continued to retch, she might die in this dream. So she tried to make some suggestions that could alleviate her situation. "Then can't you just cut down the mountain? As long as the mountain falls, whether it's the source of nightmares or anything else, they will all die, right?" "Oh, that's a good idea, but unfortunately it's not possible." Su Shinxing shrugged. "Tianju Mountain is an existence that is part of the great demonic realm itself, and there's no way to divide it. If you directly destroy the world, the nightmare itself won't end. Why can't such a big mountain be divided?" Chihaya Fukuyama tried to scratch the mountain wall, but she found that her divine power couldn't even remove a small stone from the mountain wall. To explain it in simpler terms, for example, people on Earth can observe very small things, right? Molecules, atoms, electrons, and quarks. Su Shinxing took out a chestnut from somewhere and explained to the girl seriously, "If this continues, we will eventually find an existence that is the tiniest of all things and cannot be further divided, right? Tianju Mountain is such a thing. Although it's big, one is all and all is one. Conceptually, it's already an inseparable basic unit, understand? Why do I feel like I'm being treated as an idiot?" The former top student Chihaya Fukuyama looked at the chestnut in Su Shinxing's hand with complicated feelings and was speechless. Chapter 519. The door is still intact. After going through a lot of hardships, especially for Chihaya Fukuyama, they came to the top of Tianju Mountain. Su Shinxing stared at the towering castle not far away and said in a deep voice. At the front of the castle were two towers that would definitely be a miracle-level scenic spot on Earth. Although they were called towers, in fact, if they were separated from the ridiculously large castle, they could already be regarded as a complete fortress. These two towers were more than 2,000 meters tall. Even with modern technology, there was no way to build these towers. In this castle, they were only used as doorposts. What made people curious and surprised was that the castle door was actually a wooden door. The wood used to make the more than 1,800 meters of complete wooden planks had long become an unsolved mystery. At least on Earth, there was no wood that could withstand such a large weight without breaking. What does this mean? Chihaya Fukuyama, who was slightly more relieved than the dead, still couldn't hold back her curiosity and asked after resting for a moment. "This castle itself is also integrated, as if it grew out of Tianju Mountain," Su Shinxing explained to her, "so the only way to invade is to break in from the front. When I first barged in, I also directly destroyed this door." So this thing is a door?" Chihaya Fukuyama's eyes looked as turbid as a dead fish. "After staying in this damn place for so long by now, I'm not surprised by anything." "Good." Su Shinxing smiled playfully and then kicked the door. Then the huge wooden door, which was like a mountain, began to gradually crack and collapse from where he kicked it. Although there was a saying that even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of you, the height of Mount Tai was only 1,524 meters, and the vertical height of the wooden door was about 1,800 meters. In terms of the collapse of the wooden door, I'm afraid it would be like this even if Mount Tai really collapsed. Chihaya Fukuyama was naturally frightened by this scene. However, Su Shinxing did not stop there. Instead, he waved his hand casually as countless huge wooden planks fell from the sky, blowing them all away. "Hurry up and follow him. It's best to pass through here before all the wooden planks fall off." The road will be blocked later and it'll be even more troublesome to clean up. As he said this, he walked forward leisurely as giant wooden planks fell from the sky. Wah! Couldn't you have chosen a more peaceful way to enter? Completely different from Su Shenxing's calm appearance, Chihaya Fukuyama's appearance could be described as covering his head and fleeing like a rat. But the girl was not to be blamed for her cowardice. Any normal person walking in the sky with planks the size of an aircraft carrier falling from the sky would probably behave the same way as the girl. Although it's a joke from your hometown, I think it's better if you don't try to be brave. I'm not trying to be brave. Chihaya Fukuyama stared at Su Shenxing without the slightest bit of confusion. Indeed, the journey ahead would definitely be more terrifying and dangerous than the previous small skirmishes. But even so, Chihaya Fukuyama only hesitated for a moment, and didn't change his decision to continue following Su Shenxing. For her, this dream was because Qin Xingyan entrusted it to her. Although she didn't actually play any role, no matter what, she would work hard to carry out her promise to the end. This was also the girl's persistence. As you wish. Su Shenxing didn't try to persuade her. He just turned and walked towards the seemingly endless corridor. But the corner of his mouth revealed a faint smile. Chapter 520. Sure enough, it was the same as before. They had clearly entered the castle, but the internal defense could be said to be surprisingly weak. Not to mention the current Su Shenxing, even the dragon brother Aoli should be able to break through as long as he was well prepared. But the deeper they went, the more obvious the distinctive aura became. According to the normal walking speed, it would take at least several months or even years to walk from the entrance to the center of the castle. But just like other places in the great demonic realm, the world inside the castle was also distorted. And this distortion was probably deliberately made by the people living in it to facilitate movement. As long as the people walking in it had a clear goal, the castle would deflect the space at the beginning and end of the aisles leading to that area, connecting them together so that people could get to where they wanted to go in the shortest possible distance. Logically speaking, this ability could also be used in defense so that intruders could only stay in one place forever. But for some reason, whether it was in the past or now, Su Shenxing did not seem to be regarded as an intruder by the castle. The power still provided him with services. We're here, it's here. After walking for a few hours, an antique metal door appeared in front of the two of them. Although it could not be compared with the wooden door outside, which was more than 1,800 meters high, the height of this door was still enough for the two to look up. The final Demon King, as well as the existence that made Su Shenxing feel a little afraid, was inside. However, just when Su Shenxing put his hands on the door and was about to push it open, something strange happened. Through the sunlight shining through the skylight, it could be seen that the dust that was originally flying in the air had stopped. Along with them, there were also the flames on both sides of the corridor that looked like upside-down towers, and Chihaya Fukuyama, who was blinking halfway. Time stopped? Su Shenxing looked at everything in front of him in amazement, but then he shook his head and denied this speculation. Although Su Shenxing could indeed ignore almost all supernatural effects, which of course included time stop, to be immune to this level of attack, Su Shenxing could still feel it. The current situation was almost certainly different from a normal time stop attack. That's not right. Rather than saying that time has stopped, it's more accurate to say that this dream has stopped. He glanced at Chihaya Fukuyama, who had a funny expression on his face and seemed to understand something. Emoli wouldn't do something like this himself. In other words, the one who did this was the guy inside. The other party's goal was probably to prevent the young girl from entering the hall with them. After all, Su Shenxing dared to guarantee that he would have punched through space and brought the girl back if he had only manipulated space to take her away. Only the ability to make everything stop would make old Su helpless. After all, he was not good at magic and did not know how to dispel curses. However, judging from the fact that the other party only stopped the dream and didn't kill Chihaya Fukuyama, they should still be able to communicate. The feeling of being schemed against made Su Shenxing spit unhappily. The spit shot out faster than the speed of light and blasted a big hole in the wall. Let me see what the hell you're doing. With this thought of finding fault, Su Shenxing pushed open the metal door and walked into the hall. The hall was just like what he had experienced in the past. There was not the slightest change. The space was wide enough to accommodate more than a dozen football fields. Huge, exquisitely decorated pillars were everywhere, and there were even some treasures that could not be found in other worlds. If this was the real world, Sushinshing would probably pretend as if nothing had happened and secretly take one or two of them. However, since this was Mo Li's dream, he could forget about such a good thing. Continuing forward for a while, a luxurious throne that seemed to support the heavens and earth, as well as an extremely tall and sturdy figure wearing dark gold full-body armor and making a posture similar to that of a thinker, gradually emerged from the darkness and appeared in Sushinshing's vision. In terms of size, Sushinshing was not even as big as the other party's little toe. I didn't expect to see this guy again. Although it's not him. When Sushinshing saw the final demon king who had killed him once, he couldn't help but sigh. However, as he continued to approach, Sushinshing's eyebrows gradually frowned. Obviously he was already so close, but the other party still didn't react. This was obviously not right. Could it be that even this guy was frozen with the dream? The more Sushinshing thought about it, the more he felt that this was the answer. He couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. But then he stopped when he was about 2 kilometers away from the giant. Because a little bit in front of the giant stood a figure with his back facing him. The person's height and body shape were not much different from a normal human male. His hair was messy like a hedgehog's head. Other than that, for some reason he was wearing a white coat. In fact, Sushinshing should have seen the other party earlier, but because of a moment of nostalgia, his attention was focused on the final demon king. Only now did he notice the person who was much smaller than the final demon king. That was definitely the person who had brought a certain amount of pressure to Sushinshing from the beginning. You're finally here. At this time, the other party seemed to have noticed the existence of Sushinshing. The person who called himself Shiwei sighed. Savior. Who do you think brought your corpse and that cursed sword out when you were instantly killed by this guy? The other party pointed at the giant behind him with a thumb. The reason I appeared in this dream is because I left an impression on that unborn girl. By the way, you didn't even come to help me when I was instantly killed. What kind of savior is that? Sushinshing complained. Still, his tone was much better. First, I'm not from this world and can't affect it too much. Second, if I really did help back then, would you have grown to what you are now? Sushinshing was left speechless and then frowned. So what are you here for? I'm here to warn you. The other party's smile faded, and a serious look appeared on his rather dispirited face. The world is about to be destroyed. Sushinshing thought to himself that this should be a serious moment, but for some reason his heart was not moved at all. Then he came to a realization. Perhaps it was because he had heard about the world being destroyed so many times at home that he was a little numb. What's with that expression? The other party could not help asking when he saw Sushinshing's awkward expression. No, I'm just wondering if you're joking with me. Sushinshing scratched his head. It would be too easy for someone who could make him feel a little pressured to destroy 1 or 2 worlds. I see, but you've misunderstood me a little. To be precise, the multiverse you're in is about to be completely destroyed. Everything that has form and substance would be utterly destroyed. Then, this world line would be reduced to nothingness, and even you would not be able to stop it. You could only regret your powerlessness in the endless void and finally give up your existence. The other party spoke slowly. You're not scaring me, are you? Sushinshing said suspiciously. Do you think I'm scared? Back then, the great demonic realm had harmed hundreds of thousands of worlds, and that was already a disaster. Sushinshing was born because of that disaster and destroyed the great demonic realm. But now, the other party said that almost infinite worlds in this multiverse would be destroyed. That was too exaggerated. Unfortunately, I didn't mean to scare you. The other party shook his head, and his mature yet dispirited face was full of bitterness. Because I'm the one who experienced it personally. I couldn't protect my world. Impossible. What kind of disaster could cause such destruction? Sorry, I'm a failure. I don't even have the right to tell you the true face of the era of destruction. When the other party said the words era of destruction, Sushinshing felt as if something had slammed into his heart. A moment later he felt a warm sensation on his face. He reached out and wiped it, only to find that his nose had begun to bleed. Now you understand, don't you? Even if you mention the name of that disaster, it would cause considerable harm to those who know about it. That's why I stopped this dream and didn't let the girl beside you get involved. The other party smiled bitterly. You said that the entire multiverse would be reduced to nothingness, and that even we could only regret and commit suicide in the void. But aren't you still alive? Su Shinxing asked as he wiped away the blood from his nose. Because my luck was better. In my world line, after everything turned into nothingness, my wife's body, which I tried my best to protect, turned into a small world. Su Shinxing did not know why, but the desolate look on the other party's face made Su Shinxing feel sad. Warning the other us and rebuilding the small world Vina are the only two things that keep me alive. Then, is there really no way to avoid that disaster? In truth, Su Shinxing was confident that he could survive any disaster, but he did not have the confidence to protect the world. If he really was like the other party, where every world and everything he valued was reduced to nothingness, Su Shinxing really did not have the confidence to rise again. If I have to say it, it's not that there's no way at all. After a moment of silence, the other party slowly said, I've informed many Usk about the calamity, but those Usk were unable to resist it in the end. They either died in the calamity or lost everything. But there is one exception. You should have guessed that the branching of our world line happened at the moment of transmigration. Because of the different worlds we transmigrated to, there were innumerable branches. According to my research, the other world lines would be retracted at the time of the calamity and be severed from then on, returning to nothingness. However, there was one world line that not only successfully hid itself, but even the world lines that branched from it were also hidden, avoiding the calamity. The other party sighed. If one day you meet an Us with the pseudonym Seve Adrian, try asking him for advice on what to do. So your taste is about the same. I say, is that what's worth caring about? Oh, actually, other than this, I have something else to ask you. Su Shinxing blinked and looked at the other party. Is Emoli having nightmares because of you? Yeah, if I have to say it, it has something to do with it. The other party did a double take before answering. Killer. Su Shinxing promptly punched him in the face. However, the other party did not react quickly either, catching Su Shinxing's fist in the same instant. However, the aftershock of the punch immediately passed through the fist. The final demon king behind the other party directly took the aftershock of the punch with his face. Almost as soon as the aftershock spread out, the demon king's body was directly vaporized by the power of the aftershock, and its armor was completely melted. In just a breath, the final demon king that had killed Su Shinxing in an instant and later made Su Shinxing fight a bitter battle, along with its throne, disappeared from the great demonic realm just like that. Then the aftershock of Su Shinxing's punch spread out with a bang, punching through the entire castle behind the other party, creating a hole that was more than a few hundred kilometers long, through which the sky outside could be seen. After all, the castle itself was a part of Heaven's pillar, and in theory, it was an absolutely inseparable fundamental particle, but it still collapsed under Su Shinxing's punch. There was no doubt that this punch was the extent of Su Shinxing's seriousness. So, isn't your way of repaying your benefactor a little too strange? The other party, who was unscathed, held his fist with a playful expression and said, How much strength does this projection of yours have? Su Shinxing ignored the other party's teasing, still maintaining his punching posture, and asked the other party. About half. So you're stronger than me? Su Shinxing frowned. After all, I'm already the only person left in that world line. In addition, you're the fastest growing Us I've ever seen. Although there are some unexpected factors, the title of monster can be given to you without any dispute. The other party smiled slightly. About another year, you'll be able to catch up to me. Tisk, Su Shinxing withdrew his fist, then turned around, no longer looking at the other party's invisible pretentious face. In short, I'm tired of this nightmare world. Let it end quickly. Of course, my purpose from the beginning was only to pass on the information about that disaster to you. The other party replied without hesitation. And I'm different from you. Su Shinxing stopped and said in a deep voice, I'll definitely protect the world and not let the things I value disappear before my eyes a second time. The other party was slightly stunned at first, then looked at Su Shinxing's back and smiled. That's the best. Then the nightmare world collapsed. Chapter 521. When everything in the nightmare world dissipated like bubbles, Su Shinxing found himself in the room from before. Oh. Naturally, Chihaya Fukuyama, who was frozen outside the palace, also came back with him. Su Shinxing, who had experienced everything, was different. In the girl's eyes, when she was about to enter the palace, everything around her suddenly changed back to its original state. Could this be An illusion? Because she missed a chapter, the girl who thought she was in an illusion looked around vigilantly. No, actually, I've already come back from defeating the boss. Although he had just heard the news about the end of the world, Su Xinxing was, after all, a savior who had experienced countless hells and walked out of despair. Therefore, not only did he quickly adjust his mentality, he even had the time to joke with the other party. When Chihaya Fukuyama was stunned. When you were in a daze. Su Xinxing, who casually dismissed the girl, turned his gaze to Emoli, who was originally a little uncomfortable, seemed to have completely calmed down and was sleeping peacefully. Su Xinxing reached out to touch her and found that her fever had subsided. Only then did he feel relieved. Perhaps after a while he would be able to see the little girl who was so healthy that she could even destroy the world without any problems. Miss Xingyan. At this time, Chihaya Fukuyama's exclamation brought Su Xinxing back to reality. He turned his head, and the first thing he saw was the formation formed by the oxidized dark red blood marks on the wall, which had turned from bright red to almost black. However, the bottom of the formation seemed to have been smeared with a large amount of blood. Because his vision was blocked by the bed, Su Xinxing frowned and took 2 steps forward. Then he was surprised to find Qin Xingyan, who had fainted on the ground. However, at this moment, Qin Xingyan's blood-soaked clothes had hardened due to the coagulation of her blood. Her originally delicate face was now covered with terrifying cracks, and the cracks were now a strange red due to the blood that had seeped out from her face. The loss of large amounts of blood caused the young girl's face to turn frighteningly pale. If it weren't for the fact that the vitality of cultivators was far stronger than that of ordinary people, she would probably have died from excessive blood loss by now. Even so, the girl's current situation was not optimistic. Don't you have any ideas? Chihaya Fukuyama carefully helped Qin Xingyan up and found that he did not show any signs of waking up. In addition, his breathing was so weak that it was almost about to disappear. Chihaya Fukuyama couldn't help but panic. After becoming a god, Chihaya Fukuyama's psychological quality had been trained to be quite strong, and she would not be as easily shaken as ordinary people. However, she was still a young girl in her late 20s, and Su Xinxing had never killed any creatures in front of her. Now that she saw the death of a person who lived under the same roof as her friend, she naturally felt a little emotional. Compared to her, Su Xinxing, who was used to seeing storms and waves, was much calmer. It took him almost a moment to judge that although the girl's situation was not good, and if this happened to a normal person, they would probably die hundreds of times. However, the girl seemed to be hanging on by a thread for some reason and would not die easily. In short, let's continue to let time continue to flow. Su Xinxing took out the glass ball. After negotiating with the people inside through his incarnation, he used the sword of truth to put the earth back on the timeline. After all, if the earth could not return to the normal flow of time and everything outside was still, Su Xinxing would not be able to save the girl. Now there are 3 ways to save her. After doing all this, Su Xinxing breathed a sigh of relief and then said in a clear voice, "What ways?" When Chihaya Fukuyama heard that not only did Su Xinxing have a way, but he also had as many as 3 ways, he calmed down and relaxed a little. The first way is also the simplest. Su Xinxing hesitated for a moment, then said seriously, "First I'll kill her first, hey? Don't worry, listen to me first." Su Xinxing also knew that his statement was a little ridiculous, but he still continued, "Then I'll step into the underworld, rescue her and complete the resurrection process." He spread his hands and said, "Because I'm not good at healing, I'll just skip the treatment and directly resurrect her on the spot. Won't that work?" "That won't work at all. This idea is too bad." Chihaya Fukuyama shook his head like a rattle drum. "Can't you think of a more normal way?" "There are normal ways." Su Xinxing pointed at the bed next to him. Well, to be precise, Emoli, who was on the bed. Just wait for Emoli to wake up. Although she doesn't know much about healing magic, she can still use some of the more common healing magic. When the time comes, we'll have to bribe her with a lot of snacks. Miss Xingyan can't wait that long. Chihaya Fukuyama complained. Qin Xingyan was already on the verge of death. God knows how long it would take for Emoli to wake up. What if she passes away before then? I'll step into the underworld. Can you stop using this joke? Su Xinxing thought to himself, it's just a world of the underworld. Don't talk about asking for a person. Even if I'm a little more serious, it won't be difficult for me to rush into the underworld. How can this be considered a joke? If the underworld of this world knew about this, they would probably curse out loud. Motherf asterisk Ker, when did I provoke you? Other than that, is there any other more reliable way? Chihaya Fukuyama continued to ask with a tired face. Other than the experience in the Great Devil Realm that made her physically tired, the slow progress of the conversation with Su Shinxing also made her mentally tired. Then there's only one left. Su Shinxing spread his hands innocently. Let's go find reinforcements. What? There's a different dimension on Earth called Kunlun, Su Shinxing continued. It used to be a portal to the heavenly realm, but now the heavenly realm is sealed. So Kunlun has become a secret realm with richer spiritual energy compared to the mortal world. Many rare and exotic beasts are entrenched there. What does this have to do with our topic? Looking at Su Shinxing's lecherous appearance, Chihaya Fukuyama felt even more tired. In Kunlun Mountain there's a Baizai. Su Shinxing finally threw out the main topic. That guy claims to know everything from the past to the future. If that's the case, it shouldn't be difficult for him to treat Xingyan, right? With that said, Su Shinxing carried Qin Xingyan in his arms and pretended to walk out of the room. Wait a minute, I want to go too. Chihaya Fukuyama hurriedly followed, but was stopped by Su Shinxing. Xingyan and I aren't at home, Emily is recuperating in bed. Now the most powerful person in this family is you. Everything in Sakura apartment is in your hands. He said with a face full of righteousness, causing the young girl to suddenly feel dizzy with a sense of mission. Since you've said so, then leave it to me. I won't let anyone barge in. She put her hands on her hips and said with a serious face. Although Su Shinxing wanted to remind her that she seemed to have used the wrong idiom, he felt that it was very interesting, so he simply held back his laughter and left Sakura apartment. By the time Chihaya Fukuyama realized that Su Shinxing meant to let her guard the door, it was already after the dog girl curiously circled around her for a long time. Chapter 522. He went to Kunlun to find Baizai and ask how to cure Qin Xingyan. Although it was a very simple thing in the past, it was a bit troublesome for Su Shinxing now. In the past, if he wanted to go to a certain place, he just needed to follow Mo Li's instructions and cut open the space according to Mo Li's instructions. However, now that Mo Li was sick in bed, it was very difficult for Su Shinxing to cut out the passage to Kunlun. In the other world, he practiced for 10 years to be able to cut the timeline accurately and send his disciple to a fixed time. Although it was much easier to go to a certain place than to travel through time, it would take Su Shinxing a long time to get the hang of it. But it was not impossible to solve this problem. In fact, Su Shinxing did not ask for much. He just needed the coordinates of the secret land in Kunlun. Therefore he carried Qin Xingyan on his back and ran to the Taoist temple built by the Bailu temple not far from Jiangjin. There was probably no one on earth who knew more about the secret land and ancient myths and legends than these cultivation sects that had been passed down since ancient times. The master of the Bailu temple branch was an old Taoist priest called Bade Virtue. His name sounded like a monk. However, although he had white hair, a beard that reached his lower abdomen, and he wore a loose Taoist robe, he looked like an immortal. In fact, he was in the same generation as Qin Xingyan. Because he was not a core disciple, he was even inferior to Qin Xingyan in terms of status. When they saw Su Shinxing running into the Taoist temple with a half-dead person on his back, they thought he was going to the wrong place to cause a medical dispute. However, when they saw the girl on Su Shinxing's back who was disfigured but whose original appearance could be vaguely seen, the master of the Bade Virtue temple gasped. In the previous incident of the Ro Owl in Jiangjin, the girl presided over the situation as the top fighter of the Bailu temple branch. After several battles with the Ro Owl clone, the disciples of the branch saw the strength of the most powerful person in the modern cultivation world and were in awe of her. However, now the all-powerful girl had become like this. Naturally, the people in the branch were frightened and thought some great demon had appeared in the world again. He was not qualified to practice in the main hall of the Bailu temple. When Su Shinxing made a scene in the Bailu temple and even sent the main hall flying into the stratosphere, he was just plain dead outside. Therefore, the master of the Bade Virtue temple was not familiar with Su Shinxing's face and did not recognize him at once. He just thought Su Shinxing was a kind-hearted person passing by. After asking him to put down the girl, he planned to give him some money and send him away. He also prayed for the 3 pristines in his heart and prayed for blessings. Su Shinxing naturally did not notice this. Or rather, even if he did, he would not care. Xingyan was seriously injured because of some mistakes of mine. I plan to go to the Kunlun secret realm to treat her. Do you have any documents that record the location of the Kunlun secret realm? He asked straightforwardly. Although I do, according to what I know, the Kunlun secret realm was closed 300 years ago and is no longer open to the public. Huh. The master of the Bade Virtue Temple was stunned for a moment before he replied. Also, if it's just an ordinary injury that needs treatment, we have a lot of spiritual herbs and miraculous medicines in the Bailu Temple. However, before he could finish his sentence, Su Xinxing heard a commotion from the other side. The master of the Bade Virtue Temple was enraged and roared in the direction of the commotion. The gist of it was that he wanted them to be quiet. Otherwise, the main temple would be destroyed again. However, a moment later, the master of the Bade Virtue Temple's expression turned even uglier. He looked at Su Xinxing as if he could not suppress his anger. Demon Su, Benefactor Su, what did you do to Xingyan? Why did her life tablet suddenly rot? Judging from your tone, it doesn't make a difference whether you change your words or not, right? I already said that she was seriously injured. That's why I plan to go to the Kunlun secret realm. It's too late. The life tablet is rotten. There's no cure. The master of the Bade Virtue Temple, who was gnashing his teeth at Su Xinxing a moment ago, probably felt that he would never be able to defeat Su Xinxing in this lifetime and that there was no hope for him to take revenge. He looked extremely dejected. What do you know? Just give me the thing. Sai, I will send the thing you want to the Three Pristines Temple. Benefactor, take care of yourself. The master of the Bade Virtue Temple, who had lost his beloved disciple, seemed to have aged several decades in an instant. He was originally full of vigor and vitality, but now he looked like a skinny old man. After saying this, the master of the Bade Virtue Temple waved his hand and disappeared into the smoke. Su Xinxing glanced at the smoke before slowly walking into the Three Pristines Temple. The Grand Supreme Elderly Lord, who was sitting in the middle, opened his mouth strangely like a puppet and spat out a jade slip the size of a goose egg. Is this how you treat the gods you respect? No wonder modern times can't beat Buddhism. The master of the Virtuous Temple, who was sitting in the corner, obviously did not notice Su Xinxing walking in. He was still holding his head and praying when the jade slip hit him in the head. Oh, the Three Pristines above, are you waiting for a response? He excitedly held up the jade slip, but before he could check the contents, it was snatched away by Su Xinxing. The master of the Bade Virtue Temple was angry at first, but when he saw that it was Su Xinxing, he immediately became listless. After Su Xinxing got the jade slip, he found that he did not have any spiritual power to check it, so he simply stuffed it into the hands of the master of the Virtuous Temple. Read the contents out for me. The master of the Virtuous Temple suddenly felt like a piece of burning coal was stuffed into his hands. He wanted to cry but had no tears. Chapter 523. According to the Jade Scroll, the Kunlun secret realm had indeed been closed. As for the reason for its closure, Su Xinxing had actually learned about it before. In the Desolate Era, the heavenly realm and the human realm were actually connected through Mount Buzhou. At that time, Kunlun was just a towering mountain. As the saying goes, a mountain is not high because of the presence of an immortal. In the Desolate Era, Kunlun was actually where the West Queen Mother's palace was located. However, unlike the other mythical figures who liked to stir up trouble at that time, the West Queen Mother was more of a homebody type. In order to save the human realm, when Ho-Yi shot down the 9 sons, she was afraid that he would be killed by the angry East Emperor, so she specially ordered the Sanqing bird to pass down a decree for Ho-Yi to come to Kunlun and give him the immortal elixir. Other than that, the West Queen Mother almost did not participate in any major mythical events. It was not until Mount Buzhou collapsed and heaven and earth separated that she escaped to the heavenly realm with the Sanqing bird. At that time, the heavenly emperor requisitioned Mount Kunlun and made it the last gateway to the heavenly realm. However, 700 years ago, the Tongtian River that was connected to Kunlun was cut off. It was almost impossible for the human realm to go to Kunlun. About 300 years ago, Kunlun officially announced its closure. Since then, there had been no news of Kunlun in the human realm. In Su Xinxing's opinion, the Kunlun secret realm did not really close in the sense that he had been to Kunlun several times. During those trips, he had seen many things that obviously did not exist 300 years ago. For example, tablets and the like. However, now was not the time to argue about this point. Qin Xingyan's condition was very bad. The girl who was already on the verge of death was now losing her body temperature. Su Shenxing carried her in his arms and strode out of the Bailu temple. Seeing that the master of the virtuous temple did not dare to stop him, the disciples naturally did not have the courage to provoke the ferocious old Su. Not long after, Su Shenxing found Brother Dragon in the Earth Temple, who was discussing something with the Earth Loli. Although I don't expect you to be polite as Jiang Jin's guardian, can't you knock on the door before coming in? Because she had a close personal relationship with Mo Li, as one of the few supernatural creatures who was not particularly afraid of Su Shenxing, the Loli looked at Su Shenxing and said helplessly, "The door fell down when I knocked. Can you be any more fake?" Ignoring the Loli, Su Shenxing looked at Aoli and asked straightforwardly, "Where are the ruins of the Heavenspan River?" "What, brother, why are you looking for that?" Brother Dragon, who hadn't come back to his senses, asked in a daze. If Qin Xingyan's soul really only went to the underworld after her death, then why didn't the other him who sent Apricot Blossom directly go to the underworld after Qin Xingyan's death and barge into the underworld to ask for her? Why did he spend 10 years painstakingly cutting off the timeline? If Qin Xingyan's soul would directly dissipate after her death because of the uniqueness of her soul, then what should he do? Should he practice cutting off the timeline like the other him who blamed himself for 10 years? I don't mean to look down on you, but as the earth god of Jiangjin, I've seen and experienced many of my friends pass away. No matter how reluctant I am, this is the law of nature. When it's time to let go, let go. After you've experienced it many times, you'll naturally become numb. Seeing Su Shenxing's appearance, the Loli sighed and persuaded, "This is the sorrow of immortals." In the past, when he was far from being as strong as he was now, Su Shenxing had also sent away many of his comrades and friends. But no matter how many times he got used to it, he could not get used to it. It was probably because of the stimulation of that time that when Su Shenxing obtained power, he subconsciously wanted to protect the people around him, because he no longer wanted to experience the regret of being separated by life and death. If I'm not mistaken, brother, you're looking for the ruins of the Heavenly River to find a way to go to the Kunlun secret realm through the ruins, right? At this time, Aoli, who had been silent all this time, suddenly asked, "Yes, that's right." Hearing this, Su Shenxing nodded vigorously. "But to be honest, even if I take you to find the ruins of the Heavenly River, you can't enter Kunlun with that. The Heavenly River was not a secret place in the remote antiquity age. After the Heavenly River was cut off, there would definitely be many demons, ghosts, and even human cultivators looking for the lost treasures inside as well as the way to Kunlun." Aoli explained to Su Shenxing, "Unfortunately, although some people occasionally found some lost treasures in the ruins, no one has ever found a way to go to the Kunlun secret realm. After all, 700 years have passed, and what should be discovered has long been excavated." Su Shenxing fell silent again. His intuition told him that Aoli was not lying. If the ruins of the Heavenly River were really useful, then why was there no record of anyone successfully entering Kunlun since 700 years ago? But even so, if you want to go to Kunlun, it's not impossible. Just when Su Shenxing felt a burst of bitterness in his heart and wanted to use the last method to try his luck and find Kunlun by blindly chopping a few times, Aoli suddenly said, "Actually, that method isn't that difficult. You should have had similar experiences in the past." Aoli said, then stretched out his finger and wrote 2 words out of thin air. Trem. Chapter 524. After being reminded by Aoli, Su Shenxing remembered this matter. At the peak of Kunlun, there was a wonderful tram that was said to have been built with the help of a demon. Although the tram itself was not very powerful, it did have a very magical ability to travel through space and go to some secret realms that were absolutely impossible to reach by normal means. Even Su Shenxing had used this tram to go to some places he had never been to. But isn't the tram itself in Kunlun? It doesn't seem realistic to go up from other places. Su Shenxing frowned and said, "Even if it goes to the same secret realm, doesn't the tram stop at a different place every time? No, the important thing is actually not the tram but the thing that can carry the tram." Aoli slowly shook his head and continued. His words once again made Su Shenxing fall into deep thought. Indeed, although he didn't think much about it before and didn't notice anything wrong, now that he thought about it carefully, the fact that he took the tram to go to other places was somewhat strange. It should be known that Su Shenxing was almost immune to all magic. If the tram was really a carrier of some kind of magic, then when Su Shenxing sat on it, its effect should be affected. Even in the most optimistic situation, the tram would just drive away and Su Shenxing would be left alone in the same place, confused. Combined with Ao Li's words, it was not difficult for Su Shenxing to come to a conclusion. In fact, the tram that could go to various secret realms in this world was not very special, except that it could not be destroyed by the power of space travel. The really important and magical thing was the track under the tram. Why do you know this kind of thing? Su Shenxing could not help but frown and ask Ao Li. Because when I was cultivating in the secret realm of the Dragon Clan in the East Sea, I accidentally saw some strange lines. Recently, with the improvement of my strength, I vaguely understood that there was a track in the interlayer of this world that could move freely like a living creature. Later, I heard about the tram from some aliens and figured out the truth of that thing. Ao Li seemed to know that Su Shenxing would be interested in the source of his information. He spread out his hands and answered without reservation. In the words of the human world, the interlayer of that world should be something similar to a higher dimensional space, just like the obstacles drawn on a piece of paper will not hinder us in the three-dimensional world. No matter how hidden and difficult the secret realms in our world are, it is meaningless to the existence of a higher dimension. Su Shenxing immediately pretended to understand his expression. In short, as long as you can find the tram track, you can go to Kunlun through that thing? In theory, yes, but if it's you, it's better to find a medium for transportation. Ao Li nodded, then paused for a moment and said, I remember that you seem to be able to ignore magic. Although the structure of the track is quite mysterious, it's better for you to not touch it physically just in case. If the track is destroyed by your ability, it will be troublesome. That's true. Su Shenxing also nodded in a serious manner. At this time he already had a candidate in mind for a carrier medium. Then he began to think again. He had taken the tram to the Cladrick Sea, the moon and the vegetable market in the south of the city. Among them he got off halfway at the vegetable market. Ao Li said that the track could move like a living creature, then even if he went back there he probably wouldn't find the track. Only the Fuke stations marked in the text on the Kunlun platform would definitely have tracks. At this time his eyes lit up and he looked at Ao Li. The latter smiled bitterly. If you want to ask about the secret realm of the Dragon Clan in the East Sea, it's better to give up on this idea. Is it the rule that other races and dogs are not allowed to enter the forbidden land of the Dragon Clan again? Su Shenxing asked discontentedly. Although there was such a rule in the past, that's not what I meant. Ao Li rubbed his dragon horns awkwardly. More than a year ago, humans built an offshore natural gas mining station in the East China Sea. The drill bit of that thing dug through the East China Sea's arcane realm. At that time the arcane realm collapsed and the Kunlun orbit naturally ceased to exist. How fragile are the facilities of the Dragon Clan? Su Shenxing was a little speechless. Aren't the wild monsters almost extinct because of your destruction of the environment? Ao Li said with a bitter heart, look, most of the Dragon Clan on our side died and the whole clan withered. Only my cousin and I are left, and my cousin is still being a pet over there. When the secret realm of the East Sea collapsed, I didn't even know about it. I was still pretending to be green to teach the young people how to protect the old and instigate the masses to attack the chemical plant upstream. Suddenly, Su Shenxing, as a human, felt a subtle sense of guilt in his heart. However, compared to the safety of Qin Xingyan, this sense of guilt was immediately blown away. Other than the bookkeeper, there were no other creatures in the Cradrick Sea, and generally no one would go there. Since he could not count on the useless Dragon Clan and the land, there was only one choice left. Although for ordinary people, it was indeed difficult to enter the Guanghan secret realm. Fortunately, Jiangjin happened to have an heir of the Guanghan secret realm. Anyway, thank you, Brother Dragon. Old Su waved at him. I'll treat you to grilled gluten next time. I feel that the scale of your treat is getting more and more stingy. Is it an illusion? Because Sakura apartment was in a mess, it would definitely cost a lot of money to repair it later. Su Shenxing muttered in his heart. Then he hugged Qin Xingyan and jumped directly out of the land temple. Don't just casually open a hole in other people's house. Let them through the door. The land lowly waved her short little hands and protested, but of course she was ignored by Su Shenxing, who had already flown, jumped, far away. Aoli took a sip of tea and looked at the big hole in the ceiling. I think you should be glad that after he came, there's still so much of the ceiling left. However, just as Aoli finished speaking, there was a plop sound and Su Shenxing fell from the sky again. Thus, there was another hole in the land temple. Su Shenxing did not feel anything. He turned his head and looked at the land lowly. Oh right, I forgot to ask where Chong Shaoxian lives. I'll give you the address. Apologize to me before that. Chapter 525. Since he had decided on the course of action, Su Shenxing would not continue to hesitate. After getting the address from the local loli, he did not go directly to the luxury apartment where the Chong Shaoxian lived. Instead, he went directly to the Jiangjin Museum. There was a steam locomotive with a long history preserved there. Because it was close to 7 o'clock in the evening, the sky was gradually darkening. The museum would close at 6 o'clock on non-holidays, so in fact, except for the security guards who were on patrol duty, there should be no one else in the museum. However, perhaps it was because of the leakage of the spiritual qi in Jiangjin City, and the fact that most of the objects in the museum were different from ordinary objects. They had undergone the baptism of time, and they themselves had a certain special meaning. Therefore, many of the objects had a spirit. This kind of thing, which was similar to a ghost in classification, could not be seen by the human eye. However, Su Shenxing, who could see the spirit ghost, could naturally see the spirit of these things. Therefore, even if the museum was closed in Su Shenxing's view, it was still crowded inside. Although he saw the locomotive at a glance, he didn't know where the one derived from it was. After invading the museum from the skylight, Su Shenxing searched inside for a long time, but he couldn't find the other party. Could it be that the last school anniversary hurt her so much that she hasn't recovered yet? Just when Su Shenxing was thinking about this, a familiar voice suddenly sounded beside him. Hey, are you looking for me? Su Shenxing was shocked. He turned around and saw Jiang Yu, who was wearing a set of office lady clothes for some reason. The little girl also wore a pair of gold-rimmed glasses on her face. If a tall girl with a good temperament were to wear this set of glasses, her temperament would definitely explode, giving off the feeling of a strong woman. If a charming girl with an explosive figure were to wear it, it would give off a unique uniform temptation that would fill any man, other than the masochist, with the desire to conquer. But this set of clothes was more special on a little girl like Jiang Yu. It wasn't that it was ugly, but because of Jiang Yu's flat figure, other than giving people a wow, so cute feeling, there was no other special effect. Jiang Yu, you are? Su Shenxing asked in surprise. It's because I'm a freak that formed earlier. Jiang Yu embarrassedly tugged at the tight black skirt that wrapped around her little butt and stuck out her tongue. The new monsters in this museum are all my juniors. Because they were born not long ago, they don't know enough about themselves. So, in order to prevent them from doing the same unwise things that I did in the past, I've been teaching them some common human knowledge. As Jiang Jin's last steam-powered train, when Jiang Yu first became the god of death, it seemed to have caused a considerable safety accident. It wasn't strange for a girl who loved humans and often regretted that accident to have such thoughts when she met so many of her own kind. By the way, why haven't I seen Emily? Jiang Yu curiously looked behind Su Shenxing. When she didn't see the figure that always followed him like a shadow, she couldn't help but ask curiously, did they quarrel? That's not good. No, there's just a little problem. Emily was a little sick before, but he's just recovered. He's still recuperating at home, so he didn't come out with us. I see. Then I'm relieved. Jiang Yu heard this and nodded in satisfaction. Then she said confidently, aha, I've learned how to make curry during this time. Next time I'll definitely make it for you guys. That's really exciting. By the way, the human girl behind you, I remember she's called Qin Xingyan. What's wrong with her? Is she asleep? Since the other party took the initiative to ask, Su Shenxing sighed softly. Then his expression became serious and he began to talk about business with Jiang Yu. He briefly told Jiang Yu what had happened. After Jiang Yu heard it, her eyes widened. She said in surprise, that actually happened. But then she patted her chest confidently. If you need it, leave it to me. I've been saving my energy for so long just for this moment. This time I won't screw up. Then she announced to the spirits that were born not long ago that she had taught them today and said goodbye to them one by one. So those spirits spontaneously surrounded Jiang Yu. A few of them around her hummed a funeral march, and the one in the lead looked reluctant to part. She said loudly, "You'll always live in our hearts. We'll always remember you," and so on. The other origin spirits echoed in agreement. "Is there a problem with your teaching?" Su Shinxing couldn't help but complain. "Rather than saying goodbye, it's more like saying goodbye. Do they think you'll die if I take you out?" "Aha, because there are some artworks in the museum that are occasionally auctioned off. In order to send off those artworks with spirits, I arranged for them to learn this ceremony." Jiang Yu replied with a dry smile. "I just didn't expect to use it on me the first time. Well, it's a bit difficult for them to understand human emotions. It seems that when I come back I'll have to double their homework." Her words reminded Su Shinxing of his dark life in junior high. He suddenly felt sad for those spirits that didn't know how they offended their teacher. But then again, compared to the first time he met Jiang Yu, the current Jiang Yu wasn't much different from a normal girl. This was probably a kind of growth. When Su Shinxing found the Chang Shaoxian, she was eating hot pot with Artemis and Hecate. When she saw Su Shinxing appear on the balcony, the girl almost spat out the food in her mouth. Fortunately, the girl was one of the calmer girls that Su Shinxing knew. So, Artemis, who was sitting opposite her, didn't have to face the fate of being spat out by his master. "Benefactor, what's the matter?" After swallowing the food in her mouth, the girl asked Su Shinxing. But then she saw Qin Xingyan, who was being carried on Su Shinxing's back, and Jiang Yu, who was obediently following behind Su Shinxing. In order to take care of Jiang Yu's speed, Su Shinxing deliberately slowed down. From this point of view, it was hard to tell who was the real train. To be honest, Qin Xingyan's life force was really strong. She had been tormented for so long without dying, even though she was on the brink of death. "Sorry, I might need a little help." Su Shinxing directly explained the general situation to the other party and hoped that the other party would allow him to go to the Guanghan secret realm. Even if the other party didn't allow it, Su Shinxing could still jump in. After all, Su Shinxing had helped the Chang Shaoxian and the Moon God's palace. Chang Shaoxian called him benefactor because of this. Naturally, the Chang Shaoxian wouldn't refuse such a small thing. So with the Chang Shaoxian's help, Su Shinxing took Jiang Yu through the portal formed by the laurel. According to the Chang Shaoxian, this trick seemed to be newly developed not long ago and was specifically used to sneak in. Compared to before, the Guanghan secret realm was obviously a lot more prosperous now. Even the cultivators and Guifang people from the outside world didn't enter. But with the efforts of the rabbits, it still gave people the feeling that the revival of the Guanghan secret realm was just around the corner. But Su Shinxing wasn't here to see the reconstruction of the Guanghan secret realm. After coming to the Guanghan secret realm, he had already tried his best to expand his pathetically weak senses to try to find the orbit between the worlds that Ao Li had mentioned. But unfortunately, rather than saying that Su Shinxing wasn't proficient in sensing, it was more accurate to say that he was actually terrible at it. His strongest sensing method was probably to expand his cloud scale and then rely on the feedback from the cloud scale to strengthen his senses. But the cloud scale had a limit to how much it could expand. So, although it was very useful in a small area, it was a little powerless in a situation like this where he needed to grasp the overall situation and slowly search. Not good. He didn't expect to run into a problem in a place like this. Su Shinxing was already a little anxious. To be honest, if this method still didn't work, then he only had two choices: to hack blindly or to hack the timeline through practice. Just as Su Shinxing was at his wit's end, Jiang Yu's eyes suddenly lit up. "I think I hear the sound of a train." "What?" Su Shinxing stared blankly for a moment, then couldn't help but get excited. "Can you feel where the sound is coming from?" "Let me try." Jiang Yu put her hands behind her ears and made a gesture of listening hard. After a while, she raised her head and looked at the empty void. "If I'm not mistaken, it's over there." Su Shinxing didn't have the slightest doubt. He pulled out a kitchen knife from his chest and slashed in that direction. Suddenly, the kitchen knife melted into molten iron, but the space was also cut open. No, the word cut was not accurate. Rather than saying it was cut open, it was more like the surface was cut open by Su Shinxing, revealing the wonderful track hidden under the surface of the world. At this time, the track was like an earthworm being pulled out of the soil, constantly squirming as if it wanted to hide itself again. But Su Shinxing naturally wouldn't miss this opportunity. "Jiang Yu, let's go. I always feel that there is a subtle malice in your words. Is it my illusion?" The little girl frowned slightly and asked strangely, "Sure." Chapter 526. Despite her complaints, Jiang Yu still quickly ran to the track. She took out a bell and shook it. The engine of the River Moon appeared on the track. Jiang Yu calmly got into the cockpit. Su Xinxing also carried Qin Xingyan and jumped into the back carriage without hesitation. Young mistress, are you going too? Just as Chang Xiaoxian was about to follow them, Hecate pulled her back. Don't worry, Hecate. I'll bring back a letter for you. Chang Xiaoxian smacked herself on the head and stuck out her tongue in an attempt to get away with it. If she was a normal human male, she would definitely be affected by Chang Xiaoxian's abnormal beauty. However, Hecate, who was familiar with Chang Xiaoxian's behavior, ignored her. No. There are many dangerous non-humans and primordial descendants in Kunlun. Even with your cultivation, you'll take a considerable amount of risk. Moreover, the reconstruction of the Guanghan secret realm is halfway done. It's better for you to stay here and supervise the moon rabbits. The conscience of the Moon God Palace said so. In fact, she was the only one in the Moon God Palace who would oppose Chang Xiaoxian's decision. After all, she had a relatively straightforward personality and her words were indeed righteous. Therefore, Chang Yi often had headaches over this in the past. Hey, that's Kunlun. Even mother couldn't casually enter that place. I want to go there for the rest of my life. Chang Xiaoxian hugged Hecate like a wild man and said coquettishly, I'll work hard in the future. Let me go now, so the main point isn't whether you'll skip work or not. It's that your safety can't be guaranteed. Hecate still replied indifferently. As long as my benefactor is here, I'll be fine. Chang Xiaoxian argued, even if all of you work together, you won't be able to defeat my benefactor. Admittedly, that mister is very powerful, but that doesn't mean that it's foolproof. Hecate nodded matter-of-factly. Otherwise, how would the girl behind him end up like that? Su Xinxing, who was sitting in the carriage, pursed his lips and showed an unhappy expression. Although the two girls' voices weren't loud, with his excellent hearing, he could still clearly hear their conversation. If that's the case, Chang Xiaoxian didn't plan to give up. Instead, she pulled Artemis and the rabbit-eared girl who was passing by, to her side and hugging her left and right. Oh, your highness' strong sense of trust has been completely conveyed to my heart. Your subject, Artemis, will protect your highness at all costs. Artemis immediately patted her chest and promised. I'm just passing by? Wait, your highness, please don't get so close. Lady Hecate's face is so scary. Hui Tan, who was implicated, said with tears in her eyes. Artemis, shut up. You just want to go out and play with her highness. Hecate smacked her lips and glared at Artemis. However, it was clear that this kind of gaze attack, which was quite lethal to the moon rabbits, had no effect on Artemis, who was quite thick-skinned. The other two moon goddesses, Phoebe and Luna, could only smile bitterly as they watched their two colleagues fight. At this time, River Moon's wheels were finally fully embedded in the tracks. The whistle, which meant that the train was about to depart, suddenly sounded and echoed throughout the entire Moon God Palace. This also caused the moon rabbits, who had very good hearing and long ears, to show expressions that were worse than death. In the end, Hecate gave in. After repeatedly assuring that she would definitely protect Chang Xiaoxian, Artemis excitedly brought her princess and the errand runner Moon Bunny onto the River Moon. When the whistle sounded for the second time, the train finally began to move slowly. Su Xinxing carefully placed Qin Xingyan on the seat, then gently stroked the girl's hair. At this time, Jiangjin should be dominated by the night, and it should be time for the night owls and cultivators to party. Mo Li's mental connection was still in a state of chaos, and it seemed that he hadn't woken up yet. In any case, after experiencing a magnificent day in a sense, his journey was about to come to an end. He sat on the train that traveled through the cracks in space, quietly waiting for it to arrive at the place that only existed in myths. It was only at this time that Su Xinxing felt that the human part of his heart couldn't help but feel, "Ah, how elegant." Just as he was thinking this, Jiang Yu's voice came from the small loudspeaker at the front of the train. "Conductor, there's a huge... I don't know what it is, but it seems to be moving towards us." After telling you two to take good care of Qin Xingyan, Su Xinxing opened the door, leaned half of his body out and confirmed that unknown thing that the girl mentioned. It was a mountain. There was a mountain about 50 to 60 meters high next to Jiangjin. Compared to the two mountains in front of them, Su Shinxing felt that the mountain in front of them was only about 200 to 300 meters high, and could only be considered a small mountain. Although it was hard to believe, at the bottom of the mountain was a trolley car with only the front of the car. Even though it was a small mountain, it was still many times larger than a trolley car. Therefore, at first glance, it looked like a 300-pound fat man hugging his knees and sitting on an ant, allowing the ant to carry him forward. This wasn't the main problem. The main problem was that the other side was moving in the opposite direction from them. Judging from the current speed, they would probably collide in a few minutes. "Conductor, what should we do?" Jiang Yu also poked her head out of the driver's seat and asked. "Leave it to me." Su Shinxing pondered for a moment, shrank back, and then reminded the people in the carriage to take good care of Qin Xingyan. After a pause, he also told the Chong Shaoxian girls to take good care of themselves. Then he jumped out of the door at the back of the carriage. The moment his feet touched the track, he seemed to be able to hear the track let out a tragic cry. Because Su Shinxing's body was immune to magic, the track, as a carrier of some kind of special magic, almost died the moment he touched it. Fortunately, the person who made the track was not too advanced and was able to hold on for a few seconds. After secretly praising in his heart, Su Shinxing caught up with River Moon in a few steps, grabbed the chassis of River Moon, and forcibly lifted the entire locomotive from the back. In the next moment, he suddenly leaped hundreds of meters into the air, easily leaping over the mountain that was heading towards him. But the track below suddenly twisted as if it had its own will, as if it wanted to miss Su Shinxing's landing point and let him fall into the space crack. But Su Shinxing only released a little bit of anger and the track directly stiffened. The next moment, Su Shinxing drilled into the carriage in midair, and River Moon also landed steadily on the track. After that, everything went as normal. When River Moon stopped at the platform of Kunlun, everyone finally stepped into the legendary arcane realm. Although Su Shinxing had been here many times. Chapter 527. When Su Shinxing and the others set foot on the land of Kunlun, God Lu Wu immediately sensed it. Using his authority, he burrowed through the ground and appeared at the platform. This is the home of immortals and gods, the path of the heavenly realm. Anyone who dares to step into this place without permission. What the hell? But before he could finish his act, he suddenly found that he was facing the star of calamity that he couldn't avoid. Suddenly he felt that something was wrong. Didn't this guy usually teleport here? Why did he hitch a ride here this time? The script was wrong. Lu Wu, who was filled with regret, almost immediately turned around and tried to run away, but Su Shinxing, who was already prepared, quickly caught up with him and kicked him down. Then he took out a rope and tied him up and very skillfully hung him up on a tree. "Why are you running away, Lu Wu?" After doing all this, Su Shinxing patted the non-existent dust on his hands and said angrily in a serious tone, "I won't do anything to you. What are you afraid of?" No, you've already done it." At this moment, the hearts of the onlookers were 400% in sync. Tying someone up and hanging him up on a tree for people to see, this was the so-called public execution, right? Even Chong Shaoxian, who didn't know Lu Wu, felt pity for him. "Kill me, you star of calamity." Lu Wu wanted to cry but had no tears. He begged for death. "Pull out all my organs, do it." "It's too dirty, no," Su Shinxing replied without hesitation. "Don't reject him because of this. Just looking at him makes me feel sorry for him." Suddenly, the pity in the eyes of the onlookers became even stronger. "No, don't look at me. Just let me die." "Boo, Dino." Su Shinxing looked at him seriously and said, "Suicide is not good. Whose fault is this bastard?" After a long time, Su Shinxing finally put Lu Wu down. However, at this moment, God Lu Wu seemed to have suffered severe psychological trauma. Of course, Su Shinxing knew nothing about this, or even if he knew, he wouldn't care. "Ooh, I have something I need your help with. How is it that after doing those things to me, you can still say such words without any loss? Because we're friends." "Shut up. I don't have a friend like you." Don't tell me you want to be master and servant? Lu Wu, your taste is really strange. That's not what I meant. Hurry up and fulfill my wish, you stupid servant." "Stop. My only master is the Celestial Emperor." Oh. Finally, with his last breath, Lu Wu told Su Shinxing the information he wanted to know. Incidentally, in the month after that, God Lu Wu suffered from severe mental weakness. Every time the tram stopped at Kunlun, he would involuntarily tremble, accompanied by ravings such as "Jinx, don't come over. No, don't look. Kill me," and so on. Of course, these things had nothing to do with Su Shenxing. He followed the route pointed out by God Lu Wu and walked towards the mountainside of Mount Kunlun. The tram platform was at the top of Mount Kunlun. The Chang Shaoxian and Jiang Yu, who came here for the first time, were very curious about the strange things around them. After all, Kunlun should be the place where most of the mutants lived in the Celestial Empire. Occasionally they could even see some descendants who had survived from the ancient times. However, the timid moon rabbit Huitan was frightened by the strange creatures around her. In the end, she simply lowered her head and followed behind the Chang Shaoxian. It seemed that the residents of Kunlun were all quite powerful as well. Almost all of them could sense the uniqueness of Chang Shaoxian. The girl's cultivation was only average, but the laurel root she possessed was one of the top 10 ancient spiritual roots. Therefore, it was reasonable for her to attract the attention of the strange people. However, after Su Shenxing made a rhinoceros demon disappear from the world with a punch, the eyes of the mutants were not as unscrupulous as before. That's strange. Are we lost? After walking for a while in the direction pointed out by God Lu Wu, Su Shenxing and the others found that they had returned to the place they had just passed not long ago. This seems to be some kind of Chimen Duanjia. After carefully sensing the surrounding situation, the Chang Shaoxian said worriedly, "And the cultivation of the person who set up the formation is very high. I can't even tell whether the person's body is human or demon. Is that so? In that case, we can only step on the formation." Su Shenxing nodded with a look of understanding. "Benefactor, you actually have a way to break this formation?" Chang Shaoxian, on the other hand, was very surprised. She had always thought that Su Shenxing was a cultivator or an immortal who tempered his body like a brute force practitioner. This was because she had never seen Su Shenxing use any spells since the beginning. She did not expect that he would take the initiative to break the formation. "In the past, my friend taught me a very simple way to break the formation. Not only the formation but also the underground maze and the like." Su Shenxing answered seriously, "First you have to close your eyes." The girl nodded and waited for the next step. "Then you have to run all the way forward." The girl was dumbfounded. Su Shenxing put Qin Xingyan on his back again and then grinned. "It's too troublesome to talk about it. I'll just do it for you." After saying that, he closed his eyes and ran forward. Everything he encountered along the way, whether it was walls, peach trees, bluestones, stone tablets, or Bayan who happened to pass by with a black face full of question marks, was knocked away by Su Shenxing. He closed his eyes and relied on his sense of balance to make a path for himself in the maze formation. Then the branch, which was only about 3 inches long, grew with the wind, and in a moment, it was more than 1 meter long. Then a green stream of light emerged from the tip of the branch and hung down, connecting to the root of the branch. Then the branch was pulled into a crescent shape by the stream of light. A bough with tender green leaves on it appeared in the girl's hand in the blink of an eye. "Please be reincarnated into a good family in your next life." After saying this softly, the girl decisively pulled the laurel bough toward the old man. Then, under her astonished gaze, the skinny hunchback old man leaped up like a carp, dodging Laurel's arrow. Then he jumped up with an agility that was completely different from his appearance. He even patted the dust off his body as if nothing had happened. The old man glanced at the stunned Chang Shaoxian and snorted coldly. "What are you looking at? Haven't you seen a scammer before?" Logically speaking, Chang Shaoxian had seen scammers in Jiangjin before, but this was the first time she was the one involved. Moreover, this was the first time she had seen such an arrogant scammer. "Benefactor, can I shoot him to death?" He kind of understood why Su Shenxing kicked the old man down without saying anything. "Do you?" Su Shenxing replied without hesitation. "Wait a minute," the old man immediately shouted, stopping the girl from shooting a second arrow. "This old man has been entrusted by Master Bai Zhe to bring you in." When he said this, his face was full of compassion for the state of the universe and the fate of mankind. If it wasn't for the fact that Chang Shaoxian saw him rolling on the ground and making a scene, she might even believe that this guy was a senior in the cultivation world. Under the old man's lead, Su Xinxing and the others saw Bai Zai in the room behind Xiao Hei's house. However, unlike the last time they met, the other party's graceful and elegant appearance was different. Now Madame Bai Zai was lying on a large rattan chair. She was wearing loose silk clothes that looked like a hospital gown. Her forehead was full of sweat and her complexion didn't look too good. "What's wrong with you?" Su Xinxing couldn't help but ask in surprise. "Didn't you say that you know the past 500 years and the future 500 years? Why are you still sick?" The last time they met, Su Xinxing had such a deep impression of her that he subconsciously put her on a high pedestal. He even talked to her as an equal. Now that he saw that she was sick, he was naturally surprised. Actually, not long ago something fell into Kunlun. She seemed to be in good spirits and had a calm smile on her face. It was an anomaly. "I don't know what it is, but I've never seen it in the past or the future. After that, my eyes were affected to a certain extent and the future that I saw before was disrupted." Compared to the last time, Bai Zai's eyes looked a little dim and lifeless now. "Then I'm correcting my future vision, but because I don't know enough about the anomaly, it's a bit troublesome to correct it. If possible, I hope you can help me retrieve the anomaly that fell into Kunlun," Bai Zai slowly said. "But this time I'm here for something else." Su Xinxing hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I know, I've already seen the cause of it through my future vision." Bai Zai nodded and said softly as if he was prepared, "You can leave her here. I will cure her before you get the thing back." Su Xinxing didn't expect the other party to agree to his request so easily. He was stunned for a moment before he understood what the other party meant. So, he had helped her get the anomaly to pay for Qin Xingyan's medical fees. Chapter 529. Although the Kunlun secret realm was generally a mountain, its main body was the building complex on the mountain. In addition to the buildings left behind by the West Queen Mother when she ruled Kunlun, most of them were built by the otherworldly people who settled here later. It was precisely because of this that the architectural style of this building complex was strange, but it was unique, giving people a kind of visual enjoyment that was full of strange beauty in the mess. Although the civilization weapons of the outside world, such as smartphones and tablets, had already appeared here, including the buildings, this area was more of the antique that had been passed down from the ancient times to the present. He didn't know whether it was because of the usual scenery of Kunlun or because it was a special day today, but the streets of Kunlun were full of people. Although how many people could be called people in the real sense was debatable, there were stalls everywhere just like the temple fairs in the outside world. It was very lively and prosperous. Su Xinxing's mood aside, the Chang Shaoxian was having a good time. When Su Xinxing noticed, she had a bunch of small toys and specialty snacks in her hands. "Where did you get these things?" Su Xinxing looked at the box of things in the girl's hands that looked like octopus and asked in surprise. "I bought them." The girl replied matter-of-factly, "Do you think I'm the kind of person who will casually rob things? No, I mean, do you have the currency here?" About this, I inquired about it when I was wandering in the human world. Spirit stones are the hard currency of the Eastern cultivation system. The young girl inserted the bamboo skewer in her right hand into one of the meatballs. Then she freed her hand and took out a sparkling and translucent white stone from her pocket. "This is just like gold in the human world. No matter which dynasty, it has a certain value and can be traded with all kinds of things." Su Xinxing thought about it and felt that it seemed to be true. Back then, Qin Xingyan seemed to have paid more than half a kilogram of spirit stones for tuition on the moon. Well, judging from this unit, the status of this thing in the cultivation world should not be as high as the status of gold now. By the way, compared to spirit stones, the Western cultivation world seems to value metals such as mithril, mountain copper and high danum alloys more. Therefore, the hard currencies of the East and West are incompatible. Artemis, who was standing at the side, seemed to be having more fun than his master. He was even wearing an Ultraman mask on his head. However, for the convenience of eating snacks, the mask was now lifted to the right side of the girl's forehead, turning into a pure headwear. "I have a feeling that there's something wrong with your example. So the Westerners are planning to build the ultimate humanoid weapon of war," Su Xinxing complained casually. "No, the ultimate universal humanoid weapon of decisive battle is made up of biotechnology and precision electronic machinery. It has nothing to do with Gundam alloy. Artemis waved the hand holding the chopsticks and said in a decisive tone, "It's fine as long as you understand what I mean." Su Shinxing, who had no research in this area, could only vaguely muddle through. In addition, the reason why he hadn't mentioned Moon Rabbit Hui Tan until now was because the Chong Shaoxian left her in Bai Zai's room to take care of Qin Xingyan and help Bai Zai. Hui Tan looked at the dark room with tears in her eyes and her rabbit ears drooping. She pitifully said that she was ordered to protect the Chong Shaoxian, but Artemis said, "So you think I can't protect His Highness well?" She gave up arguing and could only obediently stay there to work. "Benefactor, do you want to eat? This tastes good." Chong Shaoxian held a paper box, picked up a ball with a bamboo stick, and made an awe gesture towards Su Shinxing. "What is this?" Su Shinxing, out of shyness, didn't do this kind of lovey-dovey action in public. He just tried to change the topic to cover it up. "Kun fish ball." "Sorry, I'm allergic to seafood." Su Shinxing firmly refused. "Is kun considered seafood?" "Compared to this, I'm more curious about how many meatballs a kun can make." Chong Shaoxian took out a tea egg that was slightly bigger than a chicken egg from the bag hanging around his neck. "Do you want the tea egg?" "I'll take it." Su Shinxing took the tea egg and swallowed it together with the eggshell. Although it contained incomparably pure spiritual energy for ordinary cultivators, to Su Shinxing, it tasted no different from an egg. "In that case, would Mr. Su like to try my fried noodles?" Artemis, who was on the side, suddenly came over with interest. Suddenly, Su Shinxing felt that there seemed to be a lot of piercing gazes coming from around him. That gaze probably contained the resentment of a single dog towards a winner in life who had a girlfriend on his left and right. After all, both Chong Shaoxian and Artemis could be regarded as great beauties. Chong Shaoxian was at the level of a national disaster. Even among all the women Su Shinxing had met, she could be ranked in the top 3 in terms of appearance. "What kind of fried noodles are you making?" Ignoring the grievances of those losers, Su Shinxing looked at the white meat slices in the pile of fried noodles on the disposable paper plate in Artemis's hand and couldn't help but ask curiously, "Kun meat fried noodles?" Artemis replied happily for some reason, "By the way, the tea egg you just ate is also made of kun pring eggs." "Stop, I'm going to be eaten to extinction." "You can't escape from a foodie. Kun peng will cry." Chapter 530. "Let me go, I really don't know anything." Even though God Lu Wu saw Su Shinxing and the others from afar, he was still caught by Su Shinxing before he could hide. But this time Su Shinxing had a favor to ask, so he didn't act as shamelessly as before. He tied the other party up in a tortoiseshell and hung him on a tree in public. Instead, he took him to a small alley and carefully interrogated him. "Are you sure this is called saving face?" After witnessing Su Shinxing dragging God Lu Wu's tail, Chong Shaoxian could not help but ask awkwardly. No matter how Lu Wu resisted, even when he crawled on the ground like a cat, leaving a few centimeter-deep claw marks on the jade floor, he was still dragged into the alley. Artemis had already sensibly run to the entrance of the alley to guard, not letting the curious crowd outside gather to watch. This kind of thing doesn't matter. In short, do you really not know what strange things have happened in Kunlun recently? Su Shinxing thought for a while and felt that something was wrong. However, he did not think too much about it and just continued to ask. "So why are you asking me about this kind of thing? Can't you just ask Master Bai Zai?" God Lu Wu, who was suppressed by Su Shinxing's aura and could only sit in the posture of an ordinary dog, said aggrievedly. Su Shinxing and Chong Shaoxian looked at each other and saw the same meaning in each other's eyes. It seemed that Bai Zai did not disclose the matter of the divergent to the public. Even God Lu Wu, the guardian of Kunlun, did not know about it. In that case, there was no need to deliberately disclose it. "I have many reasons on my side." In short, has there really been no strange or terrifying things happening in Kunlun recently? Su Shinxing continued to ask vaguely. "If I must say, the appearance of a jinx like you here is the strangest and most terrifying thing," Lu Wu muttered softly. No, nothing." Looking at Su Shinxing's unfriendly face, Lu Wu hurriedly shook his head to show that he had no complaints. However, when he saw that Su Shinxing's eyes were getting gloomier and gloomier, he hurriedly found a topic to try to divert his attention. Although there is indeed nothing strange, there is still something unusual. His efforts were rewarded. Su Shinxing showed an interested look. "What is it?" Although the tram at the top of Kunlun is connected to several secret realms, almost all the secret realms have no stations, except for the home of the demon who participated in the track project. In other words, there is no way to go to those secret realms to come to Kunlun's. Unless the people who live in the secret realm is lucky enough to run into the tram's tram. Lu Wu explained in detail. Su Shenxing had some understanding of this. The Guanghan secret realm was also one of the places the tram passed through. But because there was no station, Su Shenxing and the others had to do so many things to find the track hidden under the surface of the world. Until now, the River Moon was still parked at the platform. Even Jiang Yu could only move around near the top of Mount Kunlun. Although the little girl did not feel uncomfortable about this at all, she was very happy that she could come into contact with the Kunlun cultivation civilization, which was completely different from the outside world. So what does this have to do with the unusual things you said? Su Shenxing continued to ask. Actually, before you came, there was another tram from the secret realm outside that stopped in Kunlun. Lu Wu finally got to the point. The other tram, Su Shenxing first muttered softly, and then a thought flashed through his mind. Indeed, on their way to Kunlun, they had encountered a tram in the opposite direction, and it was a very special kind. Looks like you've already encountered it. Lu Wu carefully peeked at Su Shenxing's expression. After seeing that he seemed to have understood something, he continued, they were people from the secret realm of Mount Wangu. But when they built the tram, they went a little overboard. They directly moved a small part of the secret realm and the top of the mountain onto the tram. But what's the point of doing that? Su Shenxing really couldn't figure out what the special meaning of those people making the tram look like a crow on a plane, because they were afraid that the secret realm would be discovered by the outside world. Lu Wu looked as if it was only natural. Although I don't like the humans of the outside world, I have to say that the speed of their development is really beyond my expectations, especially in recent times. Then he sighed. For thousands of years, those humans only used stones to fight with each other. At most, they later changed the stones into bronze or iron weapons. I originally thought that the greatest achievement of this group of creatures would be a few immortals who achieved the Tao. I didn't expect that in the past few hundred years, they could actually change so much. Indeed, the achievements of humans in the past few hundred years were much more than in the past few thousand years. Recently, with the severing of the connection between the heavenly realm and the human world, the spiritual energy between heaven and earth has gradually become scarce, and the secret realm has also become unstable. As far as I know, 3 secret realms have disappeared in the hands of humans. At this time, Su Shenxing remembered what Brother Long had said before. The secret realm of the East China Sea Dragon clan was dug through by the human marine excavation base, which directly led to the collapse of the entire secret realm. And as the guardian of Kunlun, Lu Wu's wealth had probably reached a level where it could rival that of an entire country. Even if all the non-secret realms of this era were added together, they might not necessarily have as much wealth as Lu Wu when it came to cultivation. It's not that rare. It's just a rare little toy. Lu Wu softly muttered, and then he casually took out something. Su Shenxing focused his eyes and realized that what had appeared in Lu Wu's furry palm was a crystal shard about the size of a fingernail. Fine, in truth, old Su couldn't tell the difference between crystal, glass, and diamond in appearance. In short, this was the general feeling. At this moment, the tiny shard was floating on the meatball in Lu Wu's palm, glistening. What's this? Su Shenxing felt that the shard looked somewhat familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had seen it before. I don't know. Lu Wu shrugged and very casually replied, it's precisely because even I don't know what it is that I find it rare. As one of the old monsters who had lived since the primordial era, Lu Wu didn't dare to say that he knew everything in the world, but he had no problem filling up a dozen libraries. Something that even he didn't recognize was truly very rare. Chang Shaoxian snapped his fingers. Benefactor, could this be the divergent we're looking for? What? Su Shenxing was taken aback. He had always believed that divergent should be some kind of living creature. After all, divergent could change the direction of the future, and a mere inanimate object shouldn't be able to do this in theory. But he immediately realized that it might be possible. Many of the UKs collected by Ing from the Space Administration were inanimate objects, but they could affect the existence of the world. Anyway, just bring it to Bai Zhe to identify it. I'll take this thing. Is that okay? The latter half of Su Shenxing's sentence was naturally directed at Lu Wu. The latter hurriedly nodded. It seemed that as long as he could send Su Shenxing away, he was willing to pay any price. So Su Shenxing reached out and grabbed the crystal shard. However, at this moment, the shard suddenly lit up, and then a white light that could burn the retina of an ordinary human shrouded the entire alley. Chapter 531. Ah, so that's how it is, no wonder I feel familiar. After the white light, Su Shenxing stood on a seemingly ordinary street, holding his forehead and sighing. Isn't that thing a fragment of the lattice world? Putting aside the fact that he now had an incomplete lattice world, when he was in the Great Devil Realm he conquered more than 9,000 lattice worlds one by one. Therefore it was not surprising that he felt familiar when he saw the fragment, lattice world. Chang Shaoxian, who was also transmitted to this world, looked at Su Shenxing curiously. Damn, is this a great magical power that can change the world? Only Lu Wu, who was still unaware of the situation, looked around in shock and was very surprised. Su Shenxing ignored Lu Wu, the country bumpkin god, and simply explained the general situation of the grid world to Chang Shaoxian. In other words, this is equivalent to the existence of the 3,000 small worlds. After listening to Su Shenxing's explanation from the side, Lu Wu finally understood what was going on. Then how do we leave? Chang Shaoxian directly asked Su Shenxing about the more critical part. You don't have to worry about this. Su Shenxing smiled slightly. When he entered this world he found that this was an extremely fragile world. If the Loren Vesa lattice world in his body was an incomplete world because of the lack of a core law, then this world was simply supported by a few laws and could only be regarded as a fragment of the world. Or to put it in a more concrete way, this was the corpse of a world. It was so fragile like a soap bubble. Su Shenxing had never seen such a fragile world, so much so that just his arrival in this world caused the world fragment to undergo violent turbulence and almost shattered directly. If Su Shenxing wanted to go out now he did not even need to summon Roland Duel. As long as he poked a little seriously he could poke the fragment of this world, thereby achieving the purpose of leaving this world fragment and returning to Kunlun. According to Su Shenxing's decisive character, he should have directly pierced through this world and returned to reality. But when he entered this world he discovered something strange. If you want to go back I can send you back now. Because it was Su Shenxing's own willfulness to investigate that thing, he did not intend to drag Chang Shaoxian and Lu Wu down with him. It doesn't matter. I also want to see what this small world looks like. Chang Shaoxian looked around with eyes full of curiosity. Thus, Su Shenxing's gaze fell upon God Lu Wu. God Lu Wu also nodded slightly. Actually, I'm a little curious about the reason why those people from Mount Wanggu gave me this thing. Let's investigate the whole story together. Since they had reached a consensus, the following matters would be much easier to handle. The level of civilization of this destroyed world seemed to be slightly higher than that of Earth, because the crashed vehicles on the roadside did not have wheels, just like the hovering cars in the movies. It looked very sci-fi. And the buildings themselves were mainly made of metal, which looked very beautiful and shiny. But in the eyes of the few people, the city seemed to have lost its color, giving off a gloomy and desolate feeling. Su Shenxing did not care about these trivial matters, but went straight to the place he had been paying attention to. It was a metal wall that didn't have anything special about it. But at the corner of the wall, someone had used a sharp object to carve a pattern. Normally, this person would probably be a typical uncultured person who liked to destroy public property. But in Su Shenxing's eyes, the pattern was far from that simple. The scene of the past appeared in front of him as if it was yesterday. Hellcrown is so big, what if we get separated? In that case, let's agree on a symbol as a secret signal. If we get separated, we can secretly leave a secret signal on the wall, and the people who see the secret signal can also follow the secret signal to find us. This pattern is an ancient text passed down from generation to generation in our clan. It means hope. If one day we really get separated, everyone must remember to follow hope. Su, I'm talking about you. Don't always put on a long face, you are the one who gets lost the most easily. So you must remember this pattern. For the future of Auravia. Su Shenxing gently touched the wall. This made Su Shenxing's mood become complicated. Could it be that there were other people in the Auravia expedition who survived and wandered into this world? What does that mean? Benefactor Dino? Chang Shaoxian asked curiously. It was the first time he saw Su Xinxing show such an expression. Fortunately, Su Xinxing had experienced a lot of storms and waves, so he quickly adjusted his mood and stopped thinking about the secret signal. He just turned his head and said softly to the girl, "It's hope." After walking for a while in the desolate world fragment, Su Xinxing and the others began to gradually see human figures. But just like the literal meaning, the ones that appeared in the city were just simple human figures without physical bodies. Some were similar to ghosts, but they were completely different existences. They existed in this world, but they did not belong to this world. They were like walking corpses, just shadows that wandered in the world fragment. If I'm not wrong, Su Xinxing carefully studied the human figures and finally came to a conclusion. This is the memory of the world. These people originally lived in this world, but with the destruction of the world, the remaining laws can no longer support the existence of humans and souls. But even if there is a bug, the laws of the world still follow the original laws and continue to operate in the fragment. That's why these things appear in the world, pretending that humans are still alive. If the world is destroyed, it will become like this. Chang Shaoxian couldn't help but cover her mouth and exclaim in surprise as she looked at those blurry figures that looked like a TV program with bad reception. This is already considered good. Su Xinxing forced a smile and said, "At least this fragment proves that the world once existed." Su Xinxing had experienced the destruction of a world, which was so thorough that all evidence of its existence would be wiped out. Apart from his memories, there would be nothing that could prove the existence of that world. It was a true destruction in the true sense of the word. Then do we continue to search? God Lu Wu silently looked at this world for a while before asking Su Xinxing, "The hope you're looking for?" "Of course." Su Xinxing said fiercely, "The remaining laws of this world fragment are not enough to support it until now. There must be something that can keep it alive until now. There must be something else." It wasn't a human figure that had become commonplace, but a human in the true sense of the word. He should be a young male. When he saw Su Xinxing and the others, his round oval face first showed a surprised expression, but then it turned into a joyful expression. "Are you also survivors?" he asked. But only Su Xinxing could barely understand the other party's language. The reason why he could barely understand was not because the child's accent was a bit heavy. Su Xinxing did not have the ability to understand languages. What allowed him to communicate with all intelligent creatures was the blessing of knowing the languages of all races. The effect of this blessing was that he could understand and use the language created by the corresponding intelligent creatures. But now that the world had been destroyed, the intelligent creatures that created and used this language were also on the verge of extinction. Without the basic intelligent creatures, Su Xinxing's blessing naturally became obscure and difficult to understand. "Well, you are," so Su Xinxing could only vaguely ask in reply. "My name is La Coluvio Jason Stein Baukila." Omitting dozens of syllables, the other party spoke his name fluently, which was comparable to Picasso's full name. Picasso's full name had a total of 71 Chinese characters. "You can call me Ravi." Then, without waiting for Su Xinxing and the others to introduce themselves, his expression became a little flustered. "Anyway, let's get out of here first. The abominations will be here soon." Abominations? Su Xinxing heard the words that interested him and asked. In his previous life of transmigration, he had also encountered monsters with the name abominations. But according to the different worlds, the so-called abominations were also divided into strong and weak ones. The strong ones could even compete with the kraken dragons of the Great Devil Realm. The weaker ones were on average at the level of a giant dragon, which was very difficult for ordinary people to deal with. Boss said that they are the residual power left behind by the guy who destroyed our world. They are the quasi-divine bodies condensed from all the negative effects of death, pain and evil. They are also the greatest enemies of us survivors. The round-faced boy gritted his teeth and said, "We are no match for those things at all. The only thing to be thankful for is that those guys are not in the same camp and often attack each other." As soon as his voice fell, some kind of ominous feeling descended. The first thing to detect the other party's arrival was the sense of smell. It was like a mixture of rotting corpses, gradually fermenting excrement, and lascivious evil creatures. It was as if the source of all the stench in the world was condensed and formed. It was a stench that was far more disgusting than kiviak and canned herring. It was a stench that would make people physically uncomfortable. What followed was a terrifying buzzing sound that sounded as if hundreds of billions of mosquitoes and flies had gathered together and were buzzing together. However, Sushinxing, who had the protection, found that this buzzing sound was actually the other party talking to himself hysterically. You gave me life, so that I can give it to you. You gave me breath, so that I can praise your holy name. But why did you abandon me and leave this world? Ah, Maria, who gave birth to me and raised me. I was born for you. I will set up an altar here, waiting for your return. It was a chant similar to a church hymn, but it was extremely ironic in the buzzing of countless insects. It was as if the filth was praising for purity, and it was full of dissonance. By the way, the other party did not mention Maria in the lyrics. Instead, there was a special buzzing sound. Sushinxing felt that the appearance of this name was most likely due to Protector's translation ability going haywire. The buzzing sound that could make an ordinary person faint and even directly destroy the semicircular canals or ossicles did not have any effect on Sushinxing. Unlike the round-faced boy who covered his ears and curled up on the ground, although the Chong Shaoxian and Lu Wu also showed an expression of discomfort, especially Lu Wu, who had a keen sense of smell, was directly knocked out by the stench. They were not ordinary beings after all, and they persevered. However, such a big movement was not the other party's attack, but merely its arrival. It seems that we caught a big fish. Sushinxing laughed. Rather than saying that we caught a fish, the Chong Shaoxian frowned, looking very unhappy. No one would be in a good mood when hundreds of trillions of flies were constantly buzzing above their heads. It's better to say that this guy directly bumped into us. Lu Wu said nothing. However, Sushinxing felt that this guy's expression was a kind of excitement that said, "Damn, I'm finally not the unlucky one this time." Chapter 533. This unlucky kid has fainted. Lu Wu stepped forward to check the condition of the round-faced boy who called himself Ravi and then said to Sushinxing, "So what do you plan to do? In short, let's pay a visit to that so-called abomination first." Sushinxing said matter-of-factly. Lu Wu immediately showed an as-expected expression. In his mind, every time Sushinxing, this jinx, went to a place, he would most likely first find the strongest existence there. Then, if he could communicate with them, he would first beat them up to establish his prestige. If he could not communicate with them, he would directly blow their heads off. He still remembered that before this jinx came to Kunlun, the Kunlun mystic realm was under his rule. It was such a beautiful place. In the end, this fellow got lost and accidentally entered Kunlun. Without saying a word, he knocked him down. Moreover, it was the result of him not making a move, and only the little jinx beside him did it. Being rubbed against the ground by a little guy whose height was not even as long as his own leg hair was probably the second biggest stain in Lu Wu's life. By the way, the first stain was being tied up by Sushinxing's turtle shell and hung on a tree for exhibition. And it seemed that he would never be able to wash it clean in this lifetime. It seems to be there. Therefore, with the thought of "I'm so pitiful. Since I've been targeted by the jinx, none of you will have a good time," he simply pointed out the approximate direction of that abomination to Sushinxing. In fact, even if he did not point it out, Sushinxing would not have taken the wrong path. Because with the arrival of the other party, the filth in the world had increased. First it was smell, then hearing, and now the influence caused by the arrival of the abomination had gradually spread to the visual part. Countless dark red impurities, which seemed to be composed of bloody chunks of flesh and squirming innards, soared into the sky from the direction Lu Wu had pointed out. This was not the true body of the so-called abomination, but the manifestation of the tremendous impact it had on this unstable world after its arrival. Then rain began to fall from the sky, but the viscous liquid was not water or blood, but an even more disgusting black mucus. It had no life, was not poisonous, and did not have the ability to corrode. All it wanted to do was to pollute and invade the world, turning everything into filth. Sushinxing waved his hand, and the black raindrops that were originally falling towards them were all bounced away. They drew an arc in the sky and finally fell elsewhere. The abomination seemed to have noticed Su Shenxing and the others. The words it uttered sounded like a religious hymn, but they were unbearable to the ears. One could only imagine the endless filthy sounds of insects. The abomination slowly approached them. The desolate land let out a sorrowful wail. The originally orange-red surface of the land was now covered in large brown, disgusting, mucus-covered filth as if it was suffering from an ugly skin disease. Even if the other party hadn't arrived yet, its range of influence had already enveloped Su Shenxing's group. Although Su Shenxing and the other two didn't care about it, Ravi, the round-faced boy who was born and raised here, seemed to have been infected with the plague. Even though he had already fainted and lost consciousness, his round face still showed an expression as if he was having a nightmare. Dense beads of sweat even appeared on his forehead. Seeing this, the Chang Shaoxian put its hands together, and a few emerald-green branches pulled out from the ground and wrapped the boy in them. It constantly released a tender green vitality to protect the boy inside and resist the erosion from the outside. Then, on the mountain top in the distance, the abomination finally appeared. It was a monster that was difficult to describe with words. It was like a piece of meat that had decayed into liquid and was then kneaded together by an invisible force. It was also like a torrent of living sludge and rotten water. Its body was about 100 meters tall, but this didn't mean anything because it didn't have a fixed shape. It was just a disgusting collection of filth. The moment the abomination appeared, a few leaves on the laurel branch summoned by the Chang Shaoxian withered and turned into ashes. Even if he didn't deliberately sense it, Su Shenxing could be 100% sure that this abomination was destructive to all life forms in this world except for itself. Unless it was like Su Shenxing who had an unbelievably strong body, or like God Lu Wu and the Chang Shaoxian who came from another world and whose life form was a higher manifestation of the gods. Looks like there's no room for negotiation at all. Su Shenxing frowned and muttered to himself. Yes, because that guy doesn't have a mouth. God Lu Wu nodded and said affirmatively. That's not the problem. The Chang Shaoxian muttered softly. At this moment, the buzzing sound from the abomination suddenly became louder. Immediately, a big hole opened in the sky that looked like it had been painted with inferior blue paint. A thick, mud-like liquid gushed out of the big hole like a flood and rushed toward Su Shenxing and the others. Disgusting. Su Shenxing's frown deepened. He threw a punch toward the sky. In an instant, two transparent rings that looked like they would only appear when someone broke through the sound barrier appeared in the space above him. But in fact it wasn't the air that was distorted but the space. Almost immediately the dark, disgusting mucus was pushed back into the crack by the aftermath of Su Shenxing's punch. After a mournful scream, the crack slowly closed. But after Su Shenxing's punch, the entire sky showed signs of cracking. Kize. Looks like this world is more fragile than I thought. This made Su Shenxing feel a little helpless. Yes, in terms of strength alone, the barrier of this small world might not be as strong as the formation boundary outside the Kunlun secret realm. God Lu Wu nodded and replied. At the same time, after realizing that he might not be a match for Su Shenxing and the others, the abomination's body gradually disintegrated. Su Shenxing took a closer look and found that the abomination was not scared out of its wits. Instead, it turned its body into countless black dots the size of fingernails. It seemed that it intended to use this method to escape from Su Shenxing and the others. Even if most of them were destroyed, as long as a certain number of black dots survived, the abomination could still be resurrected. Do you need my help? God Lu Wu looked at all of this and asked Su Shenxing. No need. In all fairness, old Su hated this kind of troublesome enemy the most, but this kind of guy was not enough to make him helpless. Chapter 534. Because this world fragment was extremely fragile, using the Holy Sword was a bad idea. In fact, it wasn't just Holy Sword Rolander that couldn't be used. Su Shenxing couldn't even use the law of causality. Previously, when he used pure strength to push the black mud back to the sky, this world had already shown signs of collapsing. If he used a higher level of causality, this world fragment would probably still die. Then, without using the Holy Sword and the law of causality, would Su Shenxing be helpless against the black dots that were like a swarm of killer bees? The answer was, of course, no. Lu Wu, I don't know if you've heard of this move, Su Shenxing calmly turned his head and spoke to Lu Wu in the face of the black swarm of enemies. The palm technique that descends from the sky? Lu Wu tactfully replied. In fact, as one of the old monsters that had survived from the desolate era to the present, Lu Wu was even more knowledgeable than Dragon Brother Aoli. In the first half of his life he had seen countless moves. If it was just the palm technique that descends from the sky, he could casually list out a bunch of them. However, there were relatively few that could solve the current predicament. Just as Lu Wu was still thinking about which palm technique to tell Su Shenxing which was better, Su Shenxing finished what he didn't say just now. Have you heard of the moved spinning assault blue spearman? No. Lu Wu decisively replied, and as if nothing had happened he put more than 3 meters between himself and Su Shenxing. Don't be afraid, it's just a joke. Su Shenxing grinned. You don't need to use this move to deal with this kind of thing. So you have to use it to deal with other things. Lu Wu silently cursed in his heart. At this time, those black dots had finally entered Su Shenxing's shooting range. Therefore he became a little more serious and took a step forward. Compared to fists, I'm actually more used to using the sword. But in this situation there's no other way, Su Shenxing said as if talking to himself, and then got into a punching posture. How long has it been since I used this move? To be honest, I can't remember it clearly anymore. To be honest, you should feel lucky that I was able to use this move. He muttered words that were filled with the meaning of a villain's flag. Then he slowly threw a punch forward as if he was practicing Tai Chi for health. Just when Lu Wu thought that Su Shenxing was joking again, Lu Wu suddenly stopped. Some of the light in the world disappeared. The sky, the earth, everything within sight was shrouded in endless darkness. However, this moment of darkness came and went quickly. Almost as soon as the Chong Shaoxian put on a vigilant posture, the endless darkness suddenly receded again. While the girl was still puzzled by the momentary darkness, God Lu Wu keenly discovered that their enemy had disappeared. Could it be that the darkness was a trick of the black spots? Was it to escape from Su Shenxing the Scourge? Lu Wu secretly guessed, and he felt that he should be right. After all, in the face of Su Shenxing, who was slightly serious, Lu Wu felt that even the Heavenly Emperor had to avoid him temporarily. But the next moment, Su Shenxing's words made him a little surprised and a little uncertain. But by then you'll be cut into pieces. It seems that it's a bit late. It was not until this moment that Su Shenxing withdrew his fist. His expression was not regretful or unhappy at all. Instead, he was as lazy as ever. Benefactor, what was that? Lu Wu did not dare to ask, but it did not mean that the Chong Shaoxian was the same. Because she still had some interactions with Su Shenxing, she knew Su Shenxing to a certain extent, so she did not mind at all. My fists. Su Shenxing answered matter-of-factly. But the girl was confused. Of course, Su Shenxing was not lying. He had once encountered a similar enemy when attacking the Demon King's army with his friends. Through the protection, the enemy's name was translated to Beelzebub. However, the clones were not small black balls but many finger-sized flies. At that time, Su Shenxing had only collected 2 sacred swords. Not to mention a killing move like Karma Severance, he hadn't even been able to comprehend many of the later sword techniques. Although he was far stronger than his opponent, there was no way he could kill him. He would always be harassed by his opponent before escaping. After that, Su Shenxing began to think of a way to deal with Beelzebub. However, Su Shenxing was not the kind of genius who could create thunder or spiral moves. After thinking for a long time, he still could not find a clue. In the end, he decided to use the stupidest way to solve the problem. Because he had not comprehended the true meaning of the swordsmanship, Su Shenxing's sword was not fast at that time. However, with the help of the holy sword, his body's strength was greatly increased, so his punches were faster than his slashes. Therefore, he simply gave up on using the sword to slash the enemy. He only used the ability of the shining holy sword to increase his speed. Then he used punches that were faster than slashes to solve the problem. However many flies the enemy had turned into, he would throw out as many punches in that instant. No, to ensure that no flies escaped, he had to throw out more punches than the number of clones the enemy had turned into. This was one of Su Shenxing's only 2 fist techniques. However, in the end he even twisted the concept and turned it into an incredible fist technique that could throw out nearly 1 billion punches at the same time. Limitless, invincible, selfless. It was because of this that Su Shenxing's famous fist technique, the 3 nothingness fist technique, was created. Su Shenxing himself, as the ancestor who created this fist technique, was called the ancestor of three nothingness. Although he himself shouted, "I'm not Ling Lo Li," to deny the name and said that he wanted to name it Brave Continuous Punch or Ordinary People's Bastard Fist to continue his aesthetics. In the end, it was obvious that he could not shake the aesthetic standards of the people in this world who had never seen Ye. It was better to say that the people in this world joined forces to ignore the funny name Su Shenxing came up with and chose a name that was more reliable in their eyes. It was precisely because of this that Su Shenxing had sealed this fist technique for a long time and hadn't used it much since. When he gathered all the holy swords and developed a useful move like Karma Cut, it was needless to say. It was not until this time that Lu Wu realized that those black dots did not run away. Instead, they were all destroyed by Su Shenxing at that moment. No, if one looked carefully, one would find a puddle of black dust on the ground not far away. That was the final proof of the abomination in this world. However, with the collapse of Mount Buzhou, the severed flow of the heavenly river, and the lack of spiritual energy in the end, and the occupation of the entire world by the mortals today, countless secret realms collapsed one after another. The more heavily guarded a secret realm was, the greater the damage it caused when it collapsed. After a pause, he continued, the residents of the secret realms like the peach blossom spring were only displaced. Most of the residents of the secret realms died along with the collapse of the secret realms. The classic of mountains and seas recorded many alien countries, and most of them were residents of the secret realms. Today, almost all of them have disappeared from this world along with their secret realms. His expression was bleak, probably because he was thinking about Kunlun, which he had been protecting for a long time. Logically speaking, with the continuous advancement of technology and the emergence of advanced human technology, how long could Kunlun, which was once the holy land in the eyes of almost all cultivators in Huaxia, remain hidden from the world? Perhaps one day, a high-speed train with a speed of 4,000 kilometers per hour would derail and crash into Kunlun. Benefactor, what's wrong? After a moment of melancholy, Chang Shaoxian noticed that Su Shenxing's body seemed to have stiffened. At the same time, he looked in the direction of Su Shenxing's gaze. In that direction there were many silhouettes of people, but among them, there were two that were particularly eye-catching. Perhaps it was because of memes, but in short, the humans in this world were very similar to the humans on Earth. The reason why those two people were eye-catching was not only that their backs were much clearer than other human figures, but more importantly, they were very special. First of all, there was a big man who was definitely more than 2 meters tall. He had strong muscles and a burly figure. On his back, he was carrying a long bandaged item that was no shorter than 3 meters in length. What was extremely incompatible with him was that beside him, there was a little girl with long silver hair who was no more than 1.2 meters tall. The girl was pulling on the corner of the man's clothes and slowly walking with him. Nothing. Su Shenxing, whose face was full of shock, came back to his senses when he heard Chang Xiaoxian's voice. He tried to suppress his emotions and replied indifferently, "I just saw an old friend." Although this was what he said verbally, his body still walked in the direction of the two figures. Chang Shaoxian and Lu Wu, who did not know what was going on, naturally followed immediately. It was just that Lu Wu thought for a moment and ran back to carry the fainted round-faced boy. But before Su Shenxing and Chang Shaoxian took a few steps, the whole world began to change violently. The ground seemed to have turned back time and was about to become a mountain range. The surrounding things were also changing rapidly. It seemed that in the blink of an eye, Su Shenxing and the two people he was chasing were going to be separated. "Don't disturb me." Su Shenxing was just about to raise his hand and smash the mountain into a basin, but just a little bit of his anger showed, and the cracks in the world's sky increased by a lot. The whole world creaked as if it would fall apart at any time. This made Su Shenxing a little anxious. What a joke, he had never seen such a fragile world in his life. At the same time, he could not bring his fists down. He was afraid that if he punched down, the whole world would be destroyed. Fortunately, he was not the only one who came to this world. Laurel. Chang Shaoxian put his hands together and a huge laurel tree rose from the ground. The dense branches easily resisted the rapidly changing terrain and provided Su Shenxing with a road. "Benefactor, go quickly." "Thank you." Su Shenxing was overjoyed. He rushed through the road made by the laurel tree and ran in the direction of the two figures. However, the moment Sushinxing rushed out of the mountain, his heart sank. The surrounding terrain had changed, which meant that the dream of this world had changed. Then, the characters in the previous dream would naturally not appear in this dream. The two figures he was chasing disappeared in front of him just like that. Chapter 536. When Ravi, the round-faced boy, woke up, he found himself lying in the shade of a ruin. Because of the great change in the world fragment just now, the surrounding ruins were the wasteland of modern buildings, but now the ruins were more like the ruins of ancient magnificent cities. He tried to sit up and shook his muddled head. What happened? Then, the memory before he lost consciousness emerged from the depths of his mind. Right, the abomination. And the new survivors. Just as he subconsciously wanted to get up, a female voice came from the side. You're awake, how are you feeling? Ravi looked in the direction of the voice and found that it was the female of the three survivors from before. Although Ravi's aesthetic was slightly different from the people on Earth because of his race, when he carefully looked at the girl's face, he was still surprised by her beauty. As a person who encountered the end of the world before he lost his virginity, he had not been in contact with a strange woman for a long time, so he was a little embarrassed and lowered his head shyly. Well, I'm fine. But he immediately came back to his senses. No, where's the abomination? How is it? He left the fallout shelter this time to investigate the abomination. Recently, for some reason, there were suddenly signs of abomination activity in this relatively safe area, which seriously threatened the safety of the people in the fallout shelter. It was precisely because of this that he was ordered to investigate the nature of the abomination. If necessary, even if he had to sacrifice himself, he had to lead the abomination away from this land. Oh. The girl showed a troubled expression. She carefully looked at another male survivor not far away, whose hair was a little thin, and whispered, "The abomination has left." Left? Ravi did not understand the meaning of the girl's words, but he just felt a sense of relief. Although he was ready to sacrifice for the entire fallout shelter, he still hoped that he could survive. That's great. Do you remember which direction it left in? But to be on the safe side, Ravi still asked. Which direction? The girl hesitated for a moment, then pointed to the ground uncertainly. As a result, Ravi was shocked. What? It rushed down the ground. What happened? Seeing his reaction, the girl was at a loss for words. Her face revealed an expression that said, I think I said something wrong. Our shelter is underground. No, I have to hurry back. As he spoke, he struggled to stand up. It was just that the filthy voice of the abomination had a considerable impact on Ravi's semicircular tube to a certain extent, causing him to not even be able to master the balance. Is it really okay for you to look like this? The girl couldn't help but ask worriedly. I'm fine. Ravi gritted his teeth and held on. At this time, another middle-aged man who had been missing since the beginning walked out from behind the ruins. He was the tallest and most muscular among the three survivors. He was carrying the body of a monster on his shoulder. It was a creature somewhat similar to the chimera in fantasy novels on Earth. Its body seemed to be pieced together by many different species. Its head was like a crocodile, its body was like a rhinoceros, and its 6 legs were a bit like a praying mantis. The 2 in the middle were like tiger claws, and the last 2 were a sturdy version of a lamb's leg. Its tail was a giant python, but at this moment, its eyes were blind, leaving only 2 bloody holes and green poisonous saliva dripping from its mouth. In addition, this monster's body was only about the size of a bull. I'm back. The middle-aged man threw the monster on his shoulder to the ground. There are no other things called abominations nearby, but there are many strange beasts wandering around. I just casually hunted one and brought it back. Lakturu, you can actually hunt this kind of monster. Ravi was dumbfounded at once. Because civilization was almost destroyed, the combat power of humans had almost regressed to the level of the cold weapon era. On the contrary, some creatures were twisted into strange monsters in the destruction, possessing destructive power far beyond ordinary beasts. After the disaster, humans instantly fell from the top of the food chain to the bottom of the pyramid, and were regarded as delicacies by many beasts. This caused more than half of the surviving humans to die in just a few years. and now they could only drag out an ignoble existence in the fallout shelter. The monster named Lakturu was one of the best among them. To hunt them down, at the very least, all the youths in the shelter had to be mobilized. Furthermore, they had to bring along the few remaining firearms that were still operational. Oh, you can really understand the words of this inhuman. Seems that the disaster. Your magical power called protection is not bad. The middle-aged man did not care about Ravi's shock at all. Instead, he spoke to the thin-haired young man who had been hugging his knees alone since a moment ago, emitting a "don't come near me and I'm in a bad mood" kind of aura. From the actions of the girl and the brawny man just now, Ravi roughly judged that the young man with thin-haired was the leader of the three survivors. Since the brawny man could hunt Lakturu, the young man and the girl were not surprised by this, which meant that they were used to the brawny man's strength. If he could persuade the young man to bring the brawny man back to the underground fallout shelter, there might be a way to lure the abomination away. Chapter 537. Because, in Ravi's opinion, the situation was urgent. After Su Xinxing and the others introduced themselves, he set off with everyone. Although Chang Xiaoxian didn't know why Su Xinxing used a pseudonym, he also used Artemis' name cooperatively. Lu Wu still used his original name. In this guy's words, his name was given by the Lord of Heaven. It was something to be proud of, and he would never change it because of this. The amazing thing was that the surrounding scenery had changed and even the terrain had changed because of what happened just now. It could be said that there was almost nothing that could be used as a reference, but Ravi still took Su Xinxing and the others to a barren land with ease. After knocking on the ground for a while, the round-faced boy suddenly lifted up a stone slab, revealing a dark hole underneath. Because there are many traps below, you must follow me. Before jumping down, Ravi also warned Su Xinxing and the others very seriously. Although even a supernova explosion might not be able to hurt Su Xinxing's hair, he still nodded very naturally. After getting an affirmative answer from Su Xinxing, Ravi jumped down from the hole. Immediately afterward, Su Xinxing also jumped down. The height from the hole to the bottom was nearly 5 meters, but there was something soft below, so even an ordinary person like Ravi did not get hurt. Then Su Xinxing discovered that not far away there were 2 balls of green light. At this time, Chang Xiaoxian and Lu Wu also jumped down from the hole. The flames suddenly floated over quickly, followed by a stench common in the mouth of carnivores. "Coolies, stop!" Ravi shouted. Thus the 2 balls of fire stopped. Then Su Xinxing discovered that the flames were actually 2 huge eyes. However, the owner of the eyes seemed to have some kind of invisibility ability. Although Su Xinxing could roughly perceive that the other party's appearance was like an enlarged combination of a wolf and a sheep through the cloud scales, there was no way to see the other party through the eyes. When they jumped down just now, they should have fallen on this behemoth named Coolie. Coolie is the guard dog raised by Boss since childhood. Ravi explained in a low voice, "Don't worry, if we lead the way, he is quite friendly." The round-faced boy did not lie. After discovering that these strangers were brought by Ravi, the behemoth named Coolie stuck out his tongue and wanted to lick Su Xinxing. Su Xinxing was afraid of being messed up by the other party's saliva, so he grabbed the other party's tongue. "Come with me, there's still a long way to go." It seemed that Ravi also couldn't see Coolie's appearance. He didn't notice that the big dog's tongue was grabbed by Su Xinxing, and he just continued to lead the way. Only then did Su Xinxing let go of Coolie's tongue. The big dog made a sound that sounded like it was cursing someone. However, Su Xinxing's blessing did not seem to think that it was a language, so it did not translate the content. After wiping his hands on the stone wall, Su Xinxing followed. Seeing him walking in the front so carelessly, Chang Xiaoxian and the others had no choice but to follow closely behind him. Ravi was not bragging when he said there's still a long way to go. Originally, old Su thought that as long as they entered the tunnel, they would soon reach the shelter mentioned by the other party, but in fact it wasn't that simple. They had been walking underground for nearly an hour, but there was still no sign of reaching the exit. Along the way there were countless traps and mechanisms. For example, there was a lava ant nest that had intricate paths and could easily be cooked by falling lava if one took a wrong step. There was also a strong acid lake with almost no hidden footholds and the opposite shore, which was filled with a nauseating stench that was even more sour than love. Once one fell into it, one would immediately melt. There was also a beach with many giant hermit crabs that liked to drag people into quicksand and enjoy them. There was also a tunnel of ice that completely violated the common sense of physics. The friction was zero, and if one was not careful, one would slip into an unknown place. In addition, there were countless strange beasts like coolie. Fortunately, most of them were domesticated. Otherwise, Su Xinxing and the others could only fight their way through. Although, in a sense, it might be faster to fight all the way there. After walking for a while, when they came to a gorgeous cave full of crystal, Ravi smiled and said to Su Xinxing, "Welcome to our shelter." Although it doesn't feel like a shelter at all, Su Xinxing looked at the crystals around him. Even with his dull sensibility, he felt that this place was very beautiful. If it was on Earth, it would probably be another 5A level scenic spot, and it was the kind that was expensive, but it would be crowded with people during all kinds of long holidays. It wasn't like this in the beginning, but a lot of things happened later. Ravi was worried about the situation in the shelter, and he didn't say much to Su Xinxing and the others. He led the group inside. As a result, before they went inside, several people who looked like patrol members and held weapons made of crystal in their hands appeared and stopped them. "Ravi, you're still alive." The captain seemed to be an acquaintance of the round-faced boy, and he was extremely surprised when he saw Ravi. "Buba, and how's the shelter? Did the abominations invade?" Ravi asked, puzzled. He thought that the abominations came to attack the shelter, so he rushed back desperately. In fact, if it weren't for Su Xinxing and the others who secretly helped him several times when he was passing through the tunnel, Ravi, who made a few small mistakes because he was anxious, would have fallen in the tunnel full of dangers. "What are you talking about? How could the abominations come here?" the patrol captain asked in confusion. Then he narrowed his eyes and looked at Su Xinxing and the others behind Ravi with a vigilant look. "And who are they?" Ravi introduced Su Xinxing and the others to the patrol captain in more concise words. But this made the patrol captain even more dissatisfied. "Ravi, how can you casually bring an unidentified person to the fallout shelter? I thought the abominations were going to invade here." Ravi probably felt that what he did was inappropriate, so he could only argue in a low voice. "And you can confront the abominations and witness the departure of the abominations. I really don't know what kind of idiot you are to believe this," the patrol captain said mercilessly, and then his eyes fell on Su Xinxing and the others. "I don't know who you are, and to be honest, I'm not interested to know. During this time, please stay outside the shelter and don't do anything harmful. We will send people to monitor you. Until your identity is recognized, you are eligible to enter the shelter." "Well, I'll stay with them too. Can the review process be a little faster?" Ravi tried to negotiate with the patrol captain. To be honest, Su Xinxing did understand the other party's difficulties. The other party was just doing things according to the rules of his side. But Su Xinxing did not intend to continue to waste time here. Even with a glance, he was certain that the reason why this world fragment had been maintained until now, and why so many creatures were living in this world fragment that was originally impossible to have any living creatures, was in that shelter. Since he could not talk through it, he would break through with force. "Don't worry, I won't take your lives." So Su Xinxing sighed softly at the patrol members and took a step forward under Ravi's puzzled gaze. "Xiaoxian Lu Wu, let's go." You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.